Kwe Greetings. Welcome to another video. Today, um, I just have a number of um, screenshots that have been sitting here on my laptop waiting to be talked about. So I'm going to try to go through them, and I won't make any promises because every time I do that, we it you know we don't get through all the screenshots, so we'll get as far as we can. But as we know, the constant topic is going to be sovereignty. um we're choosing this topic because what is it that makes an American Indian, stand out from all other cultures, all other foreign cultures, all other immigrants on American soil? What is the thing that's going to make us different from them? Well, it has to be our rights on the land, right? I mean, what else could it be? What else is it that is so significant that we would have to be reclassified? Why did we have to be reclassified? Well, the reclassification took us out of our sovereign position. So the constant question I have for Indians is, do we return to our complete sovereignty, or do we settle for what a foreign corporation calls sovereignty? What are the benefits of having our full sovereignty, and what are let's say, what are the advantages of having our full sovereignty versus the disadvantages of a semi-sovereignty, where you still have an authoritative foreign entity masquerading as a government over you? Okay, I'm not going to call it advantages because there are none. So I have to say, what are the disadvantages? Because that's all there are. When we are led by a foreign entity, they call the shots. So that's the first thing. The first thing is they call the shots, and they see you as a dependent sovereign. So they have set themselves up as the ones you are dependent upon. But why should we be dependent upon them when this is our landmass that they are occupying or sitting on? Now, if we were in a foreign country that is not our American Indian birthright or our American Indian soil, if we were on somebody else's land, then we'd be dependent upon them because that's their landmass, their resources that we are depending upon to live, right? Because we're on their landmass. Well, that would be one of the advantages of Indians owning their full birthright here on American soil. We would be the ones that foreigners would be dependent upon. And what does that mean? That we have a say in how our resources are to be used, and we profit off of our resources. That's why you have a birthright. It's so that you can live, sustain yourselves. That's why you need a birthright, right? It's not really a choice. It's a life or death kind of question. Either you control your resources to ensure that your culture remains, your birthright remains with your kinsmen. That's the advantage of being in full control of your birthright. Every nation of people has a right to their birthright. right. They are not being asked to share it. It is understood that it belongs exclusively to them. Why? Because every race has one on their own landmass. So if we have Indians who don't understand that, they're going to say, no, let's share our birthright and we take a little portion and let the foreigner run our business. Is that something that is going to be beneficial to us, or will it keep us in a subservient, dependent? Why should we be dependent on anyone but our own resources? But again, if we allow a foreign entity masquerading as a government, but is a corporation, if we allow them to run our show, they will run us and our show, and they will decide what gets meted out to us. We have to go to a foreign daddy to ask him if we can have access to our resources. Why would we do that to ourselves? Why? Haven't we been through enough? Have we not been through enough with this corporation to know that even the next election should not change anything, no matter who's running? It doesn't matter. We've had, oh boy, with the former president, we should know that even when you get a black looking or an Indian looking president, nothing changes. So that was our last hope. Really, if we have even an Indian looking president that does not see our plight, in fact, what he does is erase key historical words from the record, like the word Negro. We have Obama saying we're not going to use that anymore. No, we have to use that so that we know just what happened to us. Who was reclassified? It was Negroes who were formerly known as American. They were reclassified into colored, Negro, Black, and then finally African American. So what is our birthright? Let's take a look at what our birthright is. There's your birthright, American Indians. And that's not even the whole thing. We would have to include Canada, Greenland, South America, all the Caribbean and the Hawaiian Islands, all surrounding lands. That's your birthright. So you're giving up a lot, right? When you resettle for less. So one idea that I would love to share again is that when we do formulate our IDs stating that we're Indians not taxed, and we have a clue by this map of our linguistic areas, our linguistic territories, you might call it. By the way, this is why it was so important for us to lose our language. Evidently, it was our language that made known what our territories were. And we could see this right here at the bottom, right? Let's make that bigger like we did last time. So whatever color the Eskimo Indians had, that was their land. And so they were up here, I believe, right? There you go. So it was their, well, in this case, it was the name of their oh gosh, what is an Eskimo? Their phenotype, I guess. They went by a phenotype. I don't know if Eskimo was a language, so that's not the best example. Uh, well, it would be more beginning with Algonquin and Siouan or Siouan, Iroquois. See, these were languages. Whereas actually, I'm just noticing that some of these are not languages. I don't believe Eskimo is not a language, right? So we got some fuckery going on here, y'all. Linguistic. Well, I mean, they're saying it's linguistic. I so they're saying these are languages. I didn't realize that, you know, the language spoken was called Eskimo or maybe Aleut. Regardless, this is it was your language, according to linguistic map here, or that laid out where your territory was. So technically, once you lost your language, you basically lost your land. You know, you didn't know where you were on the map. Isn't that a little interesting? So we lost a lot by losing our language, didn't we? That's okay. We still know where we were. And if we did not go on the Trail of Tears, then we stayed where we were because that's where we were. Okay. Then that's basically how that would have went. So there's your birthright, according to your linguistic group. And thankfully, it's almost as if it's kind of poetic because it's the land itself showing us where we belong with a map like this. So there you have it. There's your birthright. Do we want it back, or yes or no? Or do we want little dots around here called reservations while we still leave all authority to a foreign daddy? Who I don't know. I don't know why we would want that. I mean, if it's an issue of being threatened by the foreign daddy, well, that's something we got to look at. Will foreign daddy sick his army on us because we're not part of his little setup? The remedy for that, or the argument against that, is no. Foreign daddy has no legal lawful right to sick his little army on us. Why? Because it's in the Constitution who we are, who we were supposed to be. And don't we have a right to choose what type of what do you call it? Is it citizenship we want to have? Well, in our case, we were Indians not taxed. That's what we are in the Constitution. So there is no war or fighting situation necessary because this is lawful, this is legal. And fighting us would basically be a form of genocide against indigenous people because we're telling them who we are, right? We're saying we're American Indians. So we have rights that go above and beyond anything that a foreign entity that just arrived to our land has over us. Okay, so no, we don't have to fear the corporation because the corporation knows who we are. That's why they reclassified us. That's why they reclassified us. They know who we are. They're just hoping that we don't remember. And my thought is that I don't believe the ancestors woke us up just to lead us back into a subservient or dependent type of situation. Then what was their bloodshed for then? Right? So how are we honoring them if we insist upon staying slaves to the ones who mistreated them way back? Right? Who would the ancestors favor? Would they favor us, or those of us who are insisting on remaining under the thumb of the oppressor? Or would the ancestors prefer that their blood be not shed in vain and that we take back what they own? Okay, so that's for each of us to ponder, right? Some, maybe some of us do think that we were meant to be eternal slaves. Some, maybe, I don't know. I don't believe that we were meant to stay in inferior position on our land forever. No other nation is being asked to do that but American Indians. No other. They're not being asked to do that, to give up, their identity. In fact, we have races of people fighting for their identity and demanding respect for who they are. That's what we Indians have to do. So again, today, we have a series of slides that we need to look at. So an Indian might say, well, isn't that what UNDRIP is for us? Isn't that what ADRIP is for us, American Indians? Not exactly. Not exactly. And hopefully we will see why this is not exactly the case. It can't be the case. First of all, you have a corporation that reclassified you. So it does not want to see you as indigenous to America. Okay? So these forces that ensured that you lost your identity through their legislations and various shenanigans, what makes them change their mind all of a sudden with ADRIP and UNDRIP? Why suddenly does it seem like, now they want me to be Indian again? You gotta common sense these type of things. My common sense, and maybe it's not, as someone said, maybe it's not common, but my thought is, if we had American presidents that we're going to see today were the founders of these two organizations, United Nations and Organization of American States. These were American presidents that spearheaded these two organizations. So we know that all American presidents were on board with us being reclassified and staying reclassified, if they could help it, as colored, Negro, Black. That's a big payday. How is that a big payday? Well, if we were Indians not taxed and there were more of us on the land and suddenly now we're taxed, this corporation, it's a baby, they raking it in. Oh, they don't have to depend on their 13 colonies for taxes. They just found a way to get the all, including the American Indians, to be taxed on their own land. And we think this is good. We think we should do business with these folks. So these American presidents that spearhead or have a lot to do with the creation of a United Nations or an OAS organization. The United Nations creates UNDRIP, and then OAS creates ADRIP. What changed that all of a sudden now they're thinking about our rights? Well, I'll tell you what changed. What changed is that they are writing our rights instead of us. That's the major issue we have to grapple with. Just like with civil rights, any rights that you get from UNDRIP and ADRIP are subject to retraction. Let's just say they are outside of your ability to call rank. If you didn't create it, you don't have the authority over it. Who created it? Well, we just gave a hint. These were American presidents that spearheaded these organizations. And these were American presidents who refused to recognize us as American Indians. And then when they do make these organizations, now it seems like they're concerned with indigenous all around the world. They never seem to get the idea that charity begins at home, and you can't fix somebody else's house until you fix yours. Did they ever fix our house, American Indians? Did they ever fix the mess that they made in our house? Oh, that's an easy answer. That's a clear no. Are you still being called Black? Are you still being called colored? Lately now, it seems everywhere I look, all I see is the term African American and Black this and Black that. Now I see it more than I saw it before. And I realize nothing is being done to stop this. You could have your cases and everything sitting in, in the courts. It's just like, we can't, it's like almost like we can't even get an injunction. It's just like, nah, just keep at it, have at it. Keep calling them Black, even though we're being challenged, by different factions that do not recognize that every single person of a certain skin tone came from Africa. How ignorant is that type of mindset? Oh, because they have this skin tone, they're automatically African. Who does that? Who else? What other people are dealing with this foolishness? Other people wouldn't have it. You can't mistake a Chinese for a Japanese without hearing something, right? Somebody gonna say something. They're gonna make sure you get it right. With us, on the other hand, right there, this shows you how Indians are being dealt with. You don't get to say who you are. You don't have that. Every other race can, but not you. Why, corporation? Why don't you want me to self-identify? Are you afraid that I'll identify as who I am, American Indian, before you came and changed my identity for me? Based on some little deal you made with one group of Indians? Iroquois Confederacy? So you think that they speak for all linguistic groups? Well, that was not the smartest way to think. You grab one little group and you make them the god of all Indians? Why would you do that? Well, because, hey, they're the ones that are against all other Indians. Clearly, right? So we can work with that. That we can work with. And whatever they say about your ass is what we're going to say about your ass. Okay? If they say that all of a sudden Indians decide to be called colored, that's what the corporations, oh, that sounds fine by us. Like, okay, you said you're an Indian, right? Yeah, but you don't even call us Indian anymore. We're going to create Native Americans, and that'll be the end of that. That's how we fix that. Well, it's still not fixed by a long shot. So let's see. Well, what should we talk about next? We want to show the foundation. The foundation. There it is, the foundation of the Organization of American States, creators of ADRIP. And as you can see, let's make sure you know this is Organization of American States. Organization of American States that created ADRIP. Okay. All right. So let's go down to the foundation. We're just going to skip to what we need to read, and you probably saw it already. In the mid-1930s, US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt organized an inter-American conference in Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires. How do you say that again? One of the items at the conference was a League of Nations of the Americas, an idea proposed by Colombia, Guatemala, and the Dominican Republic. Agents. Okay. At the subsequent Inter-American Conference for the Maintenance of Peace, 21 nations pledged to remain neutral in the event of a conflict between any two members. I don't think we need to go any further. They're telling us who was at the foundation. See, we want to focus on that. Let's okay. Can I get a highlighter, please? Stop. What you do? Okay. So okay. So here's where we want to really focus. They say it quick, and then they start blah 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 blah, and then Colombia and Guatemala, da. But who, when you go to your origin, it was a United States president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That's all we need to know, Indians, to get a clue. Did he give a fuck about you as American Indians, right? So could his an organization that he spearheaded, why would they change? You got to go to the source to know what it's all about. That right there should answer our question. If I could see if it was even one of the how about this? Anybody but a United States president, okay? Anybody but a de facto corporation's president starting this organization would maybe let me say or be able to think that this was to benefit any American Indians. I already know that these presidents, by the 1930s, they know that what they've done to American Indians. You've got the Trail of Tears, you've got all of that. So they know who we are, okay? So you can't tell me that all of a sudden, after they create their little organization, they're hoping to give us back our identity. That never happens. That's never even mentioned in an organization like this, where you think it should be. They should know, right? At this point, somebody like a president should know what happened to American Indians, but it's not even talked about. Let's just act like we're so concerned about indigenous all over the world, or all in the Americas, but we're not going to say what we did to the North American Indians. Let's not talk about that. While we're looking at, so Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Let's make sure you can somehow remember that. So can we add another highlight here? Just to really pinpoint his name. Is it possible? No. Cancel. No, it won't let. So let's just do the circle. Okay, let's do some kind of circle activity. Some kind of red, you want to make sure for those maybe with the sound down, Franklin Delano. Oh boy, I should have left that open, right? Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That's a United States president that is spearheading this organization. If he didn't give a crap about the identity of the Indians that he reclassified, or his would have been in his knowledge bank to know what happened to America. They all know. After Lincoln, come on. If they don't, then they should have been educated. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt spearheaded, it was his child, that's why he's named, the Organization of American States. This is basic, y'all. To me, this doesn't require a massive knowledge or even high IQ. It's just, where is this originating? Whose idea was this? A United States president? The same corporation that reclassified us and then started taxing us when American Indians are supposed to be not taxed? To me, this is basic. We don't even have to get deep with it. So a US president started this Organization of American States. Okay, that's all I need to know that it was never, it's not, even once you get part of it, is it going to serve you? No. Why? Again, because it didn't originate from American Indians. It originated from an American, or I should say a United States president. It did not come from American Indians. It was his idea, not ours, right? So we know what his agenda is, right? Okay, so this thing could never serve us, right? Okay. Let's leave it at that. Okay. What's the pre-background of the United Nations? Let's go back to the top. We are talking about, we did this before, but let's do it again. Let's do it again. We're talking about the United Nations, the UN, who created UNDRIP. So let's try to figure out, where did they come from? What's their origin? Well, we just had it up there, right? We're going to look at it again. This is the pre-background. So pre-1941. This goes back, right? So should we just skip down to the main part? During World War I, several major leaders, especially American presidents, especially? So they like to try to lump, like it was all these other people, but seems like it's an American president. We forget about all them. Especially President Woodrow Wilson advocated for a world body to guarantee peace. End the story, y'all. End the story. Who started the United Nations? Who idea? It was, again, another United States president. So we got Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Again, did they give a crap about American Indians? No. They were too busy reclassifying us. And now all of a sudden, their organizations are coming up with something for indigenous people. How could you have that conversation and not talk about what you did to North American Indians? Again, when we go with common sense, if the creator of the entity didn't give a crap about American Indians' identity, how are we supposed to assume or presume that they give a crap about American Indians? It's just a common sense thing. Some people say, well, that's just too basic. No. Look what all the United Nations did. Look what all they did. They didn't do nothing but create something in a C jurisdiction. They created organizations that allow them to reach into an international jurisdiction just so that they can ignore the national one. If they were concerned with the national jurisdiction, they would understand that American Indian men and women live on the land, and all they need is law of the land to protect them. They don't need anything in a commercial jurisdiction. Both of these entities are commercial jurisdiction. Both of them. It's a corporation creating another corporation, basically. It's the president of the United States, two presidents of the United States corporations, or corporation, I should say, sorry, that are creating sub entities or little sort of franchises so that they can reach out and grab jurisdiction. They're completely ignoring a continental constitution and creating corporate entities that allow them to spread out into an international, see right here, international. And you could call America international, like OAS, they seem to want to split America into states and then say that that's international. Anything that they could say, a way to get it into an international jurisdiction. All of those places should just be considered part of America, technically, right? All of those South American countries and islands, they're not states, but OAS is saying that they're states. I'm sorry, internet. See, this is what they want. They need for it to be international, because once they create an international jurisdiction, now they're going to come back and claim jurisdiction over everything. This is what would give rise to a I should have just wrote I should have just did the number. One world. Oh, this thing is acting extra stupid. What? It's not even moving. Because I don't have a let me see if I can do something here. I don't have a mouse pad right at the moment. So how about we do this? Anything that is looking to be take us into an international jurisdiction, what will eventually happen that is going to be like, well, why should you be special? There's a whole world of nations in trouble. You ain't no special. Yeah, but none of them have been misclassified, so they're not like us. Okay, but let's go one with the number one. World yeah, electronic writing is not the best. One world order. Oh, okay. Yes, I'm sorry. It looks like I'm 5 years old trying to write, right? It looked like that. It's yeah, okay. One world order or one world government. It's gonna be born in an international jurisdiction. That's where it lives. Okay. What's this doing? It's sort of like what the globe Earth is doing. I know you say, like, what are you talking about? How so? Well, just think about it. In the globe model of Earth, we're made to think that we're insignificant because of all the other billions and billions of universes. You're just one of many. Stop thinking you're so special. You ain't nobody. We gotta figure out who's out there. So a one world government or one world order is doing the same thing on earth. It's making you insignificant because look at the trouble. Like, say now, if we were to compare America to Africa, the first thing that most people are going to think of is, oh, America has all these advantages. They don't need anything. Look at these poor people in Africa. Look at them. Look at them. Who are you? But on the international scale, you're not as significant. How dare you complain about being reclassified when these Africans is walking around with their belly out to there and the flies and stuff, looking for food and stuff. And so it's like you become, somebody's going to make a judgment call that says, you don't need anything. You're just fine. On an international scale, we got to focus on these poor people. And Africa is always going to be, I told you this before, the only time you ever going to see Africa look prosperous, look like a first world country, is if they were ever able to get rid of American Indians. They have to put us up against a destitute backdrop, a poverty backdrop, so that when they call us African American, everybody going to get a picture that these Negroes in America need to be over there with their bellies out to there and the flies over there. Okay, that's what they suppose. That's where they from, and they got it too good over here, and they still ain't taking advantage of all this goodness. Well, that's not exactly the story, but okay, but we understand that's what you're being sold when you marry American to an African precursor, because African comes first and then American. So you're secondarying me. I'm secondary, but I'm primarily African, right? That's the word. The word spells. That's you put the first word you want, to be the thing that go first. And so it's like usurping my American birthright. So what am I saying? What can we say here? We don't want to go international, y'all. I know it sounds so appealing. It's like, oh, that's where they're going to respect us. Not really. I just told you why. There's other nations that's far more in need than you, right? American Indians, like Africa. That's what Africa's here for, to always show us up that we got it so great, right? And they need all the help that everybody in the world could give. Don't get mad at me, Africans, please. If there's any Africans that ever see this, don't you dare, okay? Because what you need to do is find out why you're being promoted that way, okay? Find out it's not Americans doing that, okay? It's something that is being orchestrated. American Indians don't got that kind of power, right? You know that we can't do it, right? But we just could see it and talk about it like I'm doing right now. That poverty look ain't going nowhere, okay? So it's somebody made a decision for you Africans to stay looking poor as fuck, okay? And then it's backed up when you look up the surveys like we talked about before. I told you, was it last year that I looked up like a series of different poverty surveys? Africa is like number one on all the surveys I looked at. No cap, no lie, no nothing like that. That is what the look is. It's not only a look, but it's being documented as pure facts. Okay, so someone is making sure that you always look like you need much more than an American Indian need who has been reclassified. You guys never got reclassified. But if you play that poverty look enough, it'll look like it's better to be reclassified than it is to live in Africa, right? Right. So that's what y'all strategy in the world is to always make sure that when someone says African American, think of that poverty and then think of these Negroes that don't belong here enjoying all this goodness and all this milk and honey stuff. So this is why we really don't want to be part of Africa's little psyop, and why I say psyop? I say psyop because, again, the image of the Pope kissing an African's feet is just one that cannot be unseen. Obviously, you have some kind of pull for the man who basically took, how should we say this nicely? Because they did denounce the doctrine of discovery. Let's make it official. Everybody, American Indians particularly, let's have a moment of gratitude. The Pope denounced the doctrine of discovery. He did. He really did. This is a wonderful thing. Thank you, Church of Rome. It was a move. It would be nice if it were followed up with more details about who was reclassified. But, we know that we can't expect all of that. We have to do that work. And that's why we're gonna reclaim our birthright, because only we can do it. No one else is going to do it. Not when there's so much at stake in terms of keeping the control of your natural resources. They're not gonna just give that up, y'all. Okay. But what did I want to say? The leader of the organization that has made itself keeper of all souls, like according to the Catholic Church, they are the rock that Jesus built the church upon, from Saint Peter, who was an apostle Peter. And so they really, it's a excellent way of getting that authority, is to, literally straight from the pages of the Bible. The Pope is successor to Peter, and in their scripture, Jesus told Peter that upon this rock, I build my church. So then that gives the Pope the right to say that Jesus said that I'm the rock, so I take ownership or authority over the souls of men, all men, no matter, even if you're not Catholic, basically. In other words, it never said, that, okay, this is where it gets tricky, y'all. This is where you got to understand that all religions are coming from Rome. That's a tough one. A lot of people never heard that before, and they have a hard time digesting that. And I don't blame you. Everything is a damn psyop. I mean, that's how I see it. And that's how a lot of awakening Indians see it. It's really, so what am I saying? What am I saying is, what am I saying? What I'm saying is that the Church of Rome is where all the major religions are coming from. So even if it's not, say, Christian, it doesn't mean that it doesn't trace back to the Church of Rome. If you can grab that, please grab it. It's just another way to show those who might not have seen the connection, the prevalence of the position of the Church of Rome. It's really seen, it really is the mother of monotheism. I won't dwell on it too much. I always recommend the book by Walter Williams, because it really will help you see. It won't tell you where Tameri is. That's the only issue with Walter Williams' book. But it does say that it arose from a Tamarian culture, if we understand that Tameri began in South America. So everything else in his book, he's going to explain that the major religions emanate from the Church of Rome. That church is the mother church. The characters of their scripture, they share those characters with the other religions, but they're all basically emanating from the same book, different parts of the same book that the Church of Rome put together. Okay. So we're dealing with a religious organization that set the groundwork for monarchs to come to the Americas and just take what they want. They're basing this on a church doctrine. That's why it is so important. We can emphasize that what Pope Francis did is groundbreaking in denouncing the doctrine of discovery. It's really, I just can't explain it. That is our diving board to reclaiming our birthright, because everything that was done under the doctrine of discovery now has to be undone since it's been denounced. If everything stays the way it has been since the doctrine of discovery, that means we're not doing a service to our ancestors. So once again, I'm saying, if we don't take back our full sovereignty, but want a half sovereignty with the corporation as the big boss, then the Pope might as well not have denounced the doctrine of discovery. The denunciation of the doctrine of discovery, we will find that that is the defining factor in Indians actually having the backing of the Church of Rome. Well, it has to do it because it's the one that caused the infraction, if we want to call it that. So they have to step back now and claim ownership of that, and they did. But again, the other part of that is Indians have to say, okay, I'm up to take my land back. Thank you. So now there'll be no reason for me not to get my land back. Right? There's enough of us now on this American soil, Indians, and you know it's true. The numbers are up, evidenced by the need for a pandemic. The numbers are pretty high now. This is the time for us to begin to take our birthright back. What is our birthright again? There she go. Find out where you fall on this map if you didn't go on the Trail of Tears. But even if you did, just find out where you came from. And that is your birthright. This green stuff, that belongs to my linguistic group. This orange stuff, that belongs to my linguistic group enemy, the Iroquois. Okay? And I don't advocate violence against the Iroquois. We're reclaiming our whole birthright. No need to get, keep on hating on, trifling Indians, just give me my land back, go back where you belong, and end the story. The Pope don't back you up no more with this bullshit, okay? You don't have any footing. The Pope is the leader of, in charge of all corporations. And so if a corporation is acting wacko, you're up for dissolution because the Pope done denounced the doctrine of discovery. So he's not down with your shenanigans no more, your corporate takeovers, your fake national debts. Okay. Okay. Whatever you think I owe you, which I don't, consider it paid with all the profit you made by controlling the resources on my land. How about that? I don't owe you anything, but if for some reason you can't figure why that is, we can go with that. All the profits you made that I didn't make, how about you just chalk it up that we even? Okay. So we looked at the founders of both ADRIP and UNDRIP, the organizations, the United Nations and the OAS, the corporate entities that suddenly, against their founders, two United States presidents, Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who didn't give a shit about American Indians, but all of a sudden the organizations they spearhead all of a sudden care about American Indians. Don't believe the hype, y'all. Please don't fall for that. It originated with two American, or I'm sorry, once again, United States presidents for a reason, because they still don't intend to give you your birthright back. Okay, that's why these organizations sprung up, because they're thinking of ways, once again, to take us into an international jurisdiction where we might lose a lot of our significance due to we're not as fucked up as Africa in terms of being the poorest nation on earth. So an organization that's trying to make itself look good, of course they're going to say, no, you don't come first if you consider the first world nation. We got to go for the poorest of the poor, and we're going to work with them, and you sit back there and help pay for this, by the way. You're going to use, just like they want currently, we have a mayor that shall another black looking mayor suggesting that Americans need to pay for the social security of foreigners. Are you freaking kidding me? This is the shenanigans you get with agents of the corporation. How could we work with this, y'all? They ain't trying to pay us nothing, right? But they want us to pay for I guess what they're calling it, what is it, the migrants that they're dumping on our they don't even give a shit about the quality of life that we live. They don't give it. They are going to dump foreigners here. Why? Ultimately, why? The only thing I can think of is cheap labor. That's the only thing. America, no, I keep making that mistake. The United States thrives on exploiting the less fortunate. They, again, look at you. You're going to complain when these poor migrants come from so-and-so and such and such. But you know what? Those migrants have to take care of their business like we American Indians did. How do we take care of our business? Well, we fought off the monarchs, right? And we said, nah, we are sovereign. And here's the Constitution you shall go by, right? So that's what all these migrants have to do. But America is acting like, they're not capable. We have to help them. Bullshit, United States. Bullshit. You're in cahoots with their homelands. That's what's more likely than anything. You're in cahoots with them so they could dump them here. I don't know what kind of deal their leaders get when you accept these foreigners. I don't know how much, whatever, but we do know it's done not because you care about foreigners. You care about making top dollar in your corporations by paying peanuts to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that you grab here and then talk about we got to pay for them. As if Americans are not struggling with all the shenanigans this corporation is putting particularly American Indians through. And you expect us to pay for somebody. You y'all, ooh, let me change the subject, y'all. I can't right now. I just can't right now. What's next on this thing? Okay, that's just the OAS, just so you can see what they look like. This is their website. Something pulling us into an international when all the land in America should be considered one nation. They're going to all of a sudden turn it international to grab jurisdiction, right? All of those countries are America, right? It's not international. You're making it a base states. First of all, islands are not states. We talk about this. Since when a island is called a state? Well, when they're grabbing jurisdiction, they're turning everything to a state. That's again why this map is so very important. We did not have states. We don't go back to states. In fact, we don't see states. We remind the states what territories they're on via this linguistic map. This map, y'all, I did not realize how important it is to us reclaiming our birthright. I had no idea. The ancestors just bopped me over the head one day. That's how I figured it out. They just like, boom, there's your birthright, Negro. There's your birth. They would never call me that, but they say when you can't get it, we call you a Negro. When you get it, we call you Indian. All right, as you wish, ancestors. Thank you. This map is the golden key, y'all. When you say you want your land back, you better have this map to show this corporation. And because we are Indians, not taxed, and that means we are on a different version of America. This is our version of America. The states, that's the corporation's version of America. And they thought that they could just bowl us over with those states. Well, baby, here's the real deal for Indians. We don't recognize states, just like they stopped recognizing our lines of division here, our linguistic lines. You ignored mine, I ignore yours now. But I have to, just like you had to when you did the identity grab, identity theft. You had to ignore me, right? Well, now same thing goes for you. And you will not be sicking any armies on me. You better start looking at your creations in UNDRIP and ADRIP that you created for $5 Indians and whoever that you want to call indigenous. So you could grab authority over them too. You better remind yourself what some of your ideas were. Now, again, we wouldn't as Indians, sovereign Indians, we don't have to go by ADRIP, UNDRIP. We can make our own. And I happen to know of Indians that are looking to do that. Kudos to you. Kudos to you. In other words, you have to create an Indian for it to be uniquely and exclusively your jurisdiction and tie in the land or law of the land. You make it law of the land by virtue of being of the land. A corporation is going to depend on the sea jurisdiction. That's the only thing it could live in. Commerce. Little what do you saw? Public notice. Men and women, living beings, their life consists of more than just commerce. I don't care how you try to make commerce like it is the law of the land. It will never be law of the land. Again, commerce does not deal with birthright. They deal with the highest bidder, shall we say. Who's going to pay for this birthright? $5? $5 once, $5 twice, sold to the Native Americans. You win a new identity. Thank you. Go on and get all these benefits and privileges because you don't have a birthright. Unfortunately, that belongs still to the real Indians, but we'll do our best to make sure that you get something. Consolation prize. Boo Boo the Fool, benefits and privileges. Sovereign rights, if I need to say it out loud, will always trump benefits and privileges. Why? Again, sovereignty gives you say on just how your resources shall be used. And if you do decide to let a foreigner use your resources, guess what? You get paid. Now, if you're considered a domestic dependent, you ain't gonna get paid because they're gonna say you depend on me. So you get what I give you when I feel like giving it to you, how I feel like giving it to you. When you're sovereign, you get that. You decide how much your resources cost. You set the price tag, baby. Why wouldn't any so-called Black person want that at this stage of the game? Why? Well, it would have to be because they got some deal with the corporation, that somehow the corporation is still trying to get us to turn on each other in terms of, keeping us enslaved for a paycheck or some kind of deal. That's the only thing I could think of. That's the only, why else would any American Indian not want their full birthright back? I'll just never get that. So moving right along, let's see, what do we want to look at next? That's not that. I was going to play the Erico video, but what is this? Okay, we could look at this. In the corporation, in the United States corporation, what you're going to get, so let's go to the top. We're going to show you, we read this before, but we're going to just try to bring it home now again. American Indian sovereignty. Now you see it, now you don't. This is by someone who actually studied law, okay? So it's not Heru just sitting here making shit up again. No, this is a legal professional who saw the fuckery. He saw it. It made him question his role as an attorney. He didn't realize that he was working against, well, they're going to call them Indians, but we call them Native Americans. But because Peter, Derico, Peter Derico, I keep calling him Peter Derico, because he's a man of principle, I would say he would definitely understand the plight of copper colors who have been reclassified if we bring it to him. I do believe I wrote him. I do believe I sent him an email. I don't think he has gotten back to me yet, but it might be time to send another email. This man gets it, and how we know he gets it is right here. So when I tell you that we don't want to be in a corporation, this is why. Let me show you why once again. This is a lawyer, right? This is a lawyer. He would know what the law is really doing, wouldn't he? Okay, so let's see what he has to say. We read this before, but we want to bring this point home. Why is Heru always talking about sovereignty? Because a professional showed me what the kind of sovereignty that the corporation wants to give us. You probably started reading already because I keep talking. Okay. Federal Indian law. When we enter into the realm of federal Indian law, we need to keep in mind that we are traveling in a semantic world created by one group to rule another. This is what you get with the corporation. A semantic world created by the corporation to rule over your Indian ass. Let me translate what the brother just said. The terminology of law is a powerful naming process. I like to say it's a renaming process, but he's the pro. We'll go with what he says. The terminology of law is a powerful Oh, I just can't. Renaming process, because that's what it is. They take a word and they redefine, is what I should say. Redefine. The terminology of law is a powerful naming process. In working with this law, we will use the names that it uses, like the word sovereignty, but we will always want to keep in mind that the reality behind the names is what we are struggling over. According to the theory of sovereignty in federal Indian law, okay, let's highlight that, because we want to be sure. He's talking about the kind of sovereignty the federal government offers Indians. So he says, according to their theory, federal Indian law, in federal, okay, according to the theory of sovereignty in federal Indian law, tribal peoples have what? A lesser form of sovereignty. When your ancestors walked on this good green America, did they have a lesser sovereignty to anyone? Did they? They did not, right? So why would we now settle for a lesser form from the colonizer himself? What gives the colonizer the right to give us a now you see it, now you don't type of sovereignty that is a lesser form of sovereignty? Who gave you that right? Well, the corporation would say the doctrine of discovery did. Okay, well, newsflash. The doctrine of discovery has been denounced. So now what? What are you standing on now? Old habits? Well, you better start creating new ones. Not every Indian wants the bullshit. According to the theory of sovereignty in federal Indian law, we want to make sure we know what federal means, right? That's the United States, the federal, that sits on the District of Columbia, right? But has now bled into the states and made the states little franchises, right? So the states are now also doing the bidding of the feds, okay? So according to the theory of sovereignty in federal Indian law, tribal peoples have a lesser form of sovereignty. Now, before the colonizer arrived, what did they have a less sovereignty or did they have full sovereignty? Okay, so what do they want to get back now that all this shit has been denounced? Why would they settle for lesser at this point, right? Your guess is as good as mine. Okay, so a lesser form of sovereignty, which is not really sovereignty at all. This is a lawyer talking, y'all. He done went through, the ropes or whatever. He knows what he's talking about, right? It's not Heru talking about Moorish doctrine. This lawyer is not Moorish. Okay, he's not a Moor. This is a bar association Caucasian man who is telling you that the sovereignty offered by the federal system, the federal government, is a lesser form of sovereignty. He's not a Moor. He's not wearing the fez and all of that. He's not even talking about any religion, right? Like, Islam or nothing like that. This is not, he's not talking more science, y'all. He's not talking, he never mentions that once. Should we do a word search? Oh, let's just do it for the heck of it. Then we get back to it. Is this, let's see, Moor? Is this about being a Moor? There's not one mention of a Moor in this. Let's try Islam. No. Oh, wait a minute. There is Islam, but it's not. I believe there is. No, or maybe that was another art. No Islam. Okay. Oh, wait. See, I thought it was. I thought it was. Okay. Okay. So, okay. So here, since we found it, we gotta read it, right? Well, where's the first one? First one is up here. Ilyas Ahmad, in his discussion of the conception of sovereignty in Islam, suggested that a realistic analysis of sovereignty would discover that the ultimate moving force which inspires and controls political action is a spiritual force. Yes, that's why the doctrine of discovery caused all of this. It was, they assumed it to be a spiritual force. Unfortunately, it was the spirit of Satan. But okay. The ultimate, okay. So he's quoting someone. Now he's not Islamic. Peter Derico is not a Moor. He, in his delvings to uncover what real sovereignty is, he's trying to look at what some religions say, but he is not a Moor, and he's not pushing Islam. He's just quoting someone. Okay, maybe we should read more of this section. I promise you, though, I read this before, and no, he's not Islamic. He's not pushing Islam. He's just quoting someone who, and I guess he figured we can't go with Christians, right? Because Christians already let us know how they feel about the doctrine of discovery. So he's trying to go through another route besides the one that declared the doctrine of discovery directly. Okay, it's one entity, but it was the Catholic or Roman Church branch through their papacy or their popes that actually did the do. So that it's the same entity still, though. Okay. So he's quoting Ahmad. The ultimate moving force which inspires and controls political action is a spiritual force, a common conviction that makes for righteousness a common conscience. See, that's what the one world thing requires. Like, you got to be on the same page for me to dominate you. Because if you're thinking about this deity over there and that deity over there, then we can't dominate you correctly. We need you to have one doctrine, you know. So I actually agree with Ahmad here that they're roughly basing their ideas on misreading of scripture, because that's why the Pope denounced it, because he realized, oops, today's world, this kind of thing don't really fly. Back then, when we was in full, what do you want to call it? When they had the Crusades, you know, when we were in full war crusade form, we could do this. But now that we're a kinder, gentler, we don't fight, we don't kill people, we don't shed blood. Now we have to say the doctrine of discovery was wrong, because that's when we was kicking ass and we didn't give a damn what you thought. It was all about spreading our religion. Okay. So I think that's why he's quoting someone. He's looking for some, in other words, he's trying to get a connection that shows spirituality would affirm the sovereignty of indigenous people somewhere in spirituality. So he's using this guy and what this guy had to say. Now, I would have to think that not all people who adhere to Islam would even agree with Ahmad, because as we know, we have some that believe that no, well, in terms of you only going to get that through Allah. We ain't technically this, I can't even speak for what this dude believes, but the point I was trying to make, and maybe I'm all over the place, is that Peter DeRico himself is not a Moor. Now he can use the quotes of someone to make his point and still not be a Moor, and he's not. This man is too indigenous driven to be a Moor. He's more concerned about the sovereignty of indigenous. You know what I'm saying? So he wouldn't go with a sultan or something like that. A sultan is a monarch, basically. So Mr. DeRico is concerned about indigenous people who are having the wool pulled over their eyes by a federal system that insists on calling its half-assed sovereignty full, as if it's full sovereignty. Okay, so that's what's going on here. I don't know if this is really the suggestion is startling. Okay, let's read. The suggestion is startling because we are used to the Western notion of separation of church and state. So this is Mr. D'Erico talking. Western discussion can speak of common will, but gets nervous with the thought that this phrase only acquires meaning in spiritual terms. As we have seen, however, Western political thinking itself is grounded in, like we just said, theological concepts of Christian nationalism. Okay. The notion of absolute unlimited power held permanently in a single person or source, inalienable, indivisible, and original, is a definition of the Judeo-Christian Islamic God. So he's showing us Judeo-Christian Islamic. He's basically saying that, this God died around the time of Machiavelli. Sovereignty was his earthly replacement. So this is, I'm sorry, I thought Mr. D'Erico was saying this. Actually, this is Mr. Walker. Okay. So he's just quoting different religious writings from different, I guess, religious folks. The way to self-determination. So this section is called The Way to Self-Determination. Indigenous peoples around the world are attacking the supremacy of state governments. Yes. See, this is where I think even my videos are going. The indigenous people around the world are attacking the supremacy of state. The state came after our linguistic line, so it can't call authority over us. We were here before it. That's why we were reclassified. From an indigenous perspective, state sovereignty is a claim that violates their own pre-existing self-determination. See, this is Mr. D'Erico just laying it on us, y'all. He's talking facts, man. From an indigenous perspective, well, what he would presume to be an indigenous, some of our indigenous want the state to be sovereign over us. But Mr. D'Erico is thinking, well, an indigenous who doesn't want to be dominated would claim that state sovereignty violates their own pre-existing self-determination. He's correct. Western jurisprudence has done a great deal to exclude non-state societies. An Indian would be in a non-state society. Now, we did have our linguistic territories, but that wasn't the same. It's not state. That's the word itself. It's just an imposing of commercial law. It has to be some form of commercial law, is a lot, because all of it seems to gel so well in a commercial construct. Western jurisprudence has done a great deal to exclude. So in other words, that's why a lot of our indigenous feel like we don't have a legal footing, because what else is there beside the state and the District of Columbia federal government? What else can you be? That's why our linguistic map is here. That's what we are. That takes precedence over any state or any district or any foreign thing on the land. So, and he's telling you that our legal system, Western jurisprudence, has done a great deal. This is what he learned as an attorney in America, or I should say the United States. Western jurisprudence has done a great deal to exclude non-state societies. Well, Mr. D'Erico, I could tell you, they've not only excluded non-state society, they erased our identity. So they're doing a lot more than just excluding. They're renaming and reclassifying as well. So they're excluding, they've done a great deal to exclude, shall we say, tribal societies from the domain of law. They don't even want to recognize that we have a whole law of the land thing going on here. They don't even want to talk about that. They're too busy flooding us with commerce because they lack hierarchical authority structures. So the reason why the Western legal system does a great deal to exclude more tribal societies or clan societies is because they lack hierarchical authority. They need somebody to be in charge so that they can get in bed with that person that's in charge and begin to turn them against their own people. So they like authority because they will get in bed with that hierarchical authority and they will begin to buy them out. If indigenous peoples follow the model of state sovereignty, which they are being told they cannot do because they are not states, they may find that when they attain this goal, they have sacrificed an underlying goal of self-defined self-determination. This is why I love this man. He's even a little, I want to say he's a little more in tune to the situation than even Anna. And y'all know how I feel about Anna. I learned so much from her. But this dude is bringing it home to the case of the Indian. Anna is bringing it home for the foreigner. And she's bringing them back to the state. This man is trying to bring Indians back to their linguistic lines, y'all. If you really listen to what he's saying, he's not about state sovereignty. He's saying that if indigenous people follow the model of state sovereignty, they may find that when they attain this goal, see, I had to cut this part out so you can hear what he's saying. So let's read it. Let's take it from here. here, here, and then let's skip right over to hear what the man is saying, okay? If indigenous peoples follow the model of state sovereignty, they may find that when they attain this goal of state sovereignty, they have sacrificed. He's saying if Indians get into states, they will find they have sacrificed the underlying goal of self-defined self-determination. This is why Heru started to sing about, we don't want to be in states either, because we will find that we have sacrificed self-determination, self-definition. He's telling us that the state ain't it, y'all. This is a legal professional. Forget about what you heard some YouTubers say, including myself, if you need to, if you want to. This is what a legal professional is saying. Oh, gosh. I'm just going to leave that for you to ponder. We're just going to take a few minutes. Now, I think we understand why we don't want to be in the federal system. Think federal census. Think creation of the 14th Amendment. Think Southern states being forced to adopt the 14th Amendment, which turned state nationals into United States citizens. What does that mean? State means one of the organic states. Originally, that's what it meant. One of the organic states, which Indians still don't want to be in, but we're just talking about it right now. We're just using it as an example. You can be a citizen of the state you were born, or you can be a citizen of the District of Columbia. Why did they need you to be a United States citizen and not a citizen of the state you were born in? It was a jurisdiction grab, y'all. The states had sovereignty, as this man just told us. But if they take the people out of the state, then who has sovereignty? Just the state. And what is the state? A franchise of the District of Columbia. At this point, that is what it is. So who has all the sovereignty now? The District of Columbia. And if you are under the District of Columbia, who do they have this sovereignty over? You, the United States citizen. Oh, okay, thank you. That's what I thought, yes. So you see how that little switcheroo worked out, y'all? Who owns the District of Columbia? That's a monarchy, right? Need we say which one it is? So if you are a United States citizen to the District of Columbia, and that district is owned by a monarchy, who is your king? Not you. Not you, okay? You've been taken out of the state, okay? Now you're in a district. Do you ever feel like somehow you don't have any say in all of this, in any of the politics? They just bring migrants here and no one seemed to have consulted anybody about this little undertaking. Well, they took you out of commission, y'all. You don't got no say in this. Another reason why people should not want to be under the feds. They just railroad your ass. That's all they do. We're not advocating violence. No, we are peaceful. We're just as peaceful as Martin Luther King would like us to be. And we want to be that way because we don't have to fight anybody. Why? Because we have a whole constitution from 1787 that tells someone who has half a brain that we were not to be enumerated, which means we were not under your state or federal system. We were Indians not taxed, and that was a status. You don't put exemptions in constitutions because they don't apply carte blanche like that. Exemptions are specific. But a constitution is carte blanche. That means all Indians, and there ain't no special exceptions. Indians are not taxed, point blank, period. That's why it's in the Constitution. It's supposed to be perpetual. It's not subject to any changes like you get when you got civil laws or civil rights, subject to change, subject to retraction. They are not unalienable. Indian not tax was unalienable. It wasn't supposed to be fucked with or reinterpreted so that they could tax your ass. They are getting so much revenue by taxing us, y'all. They done took all the wealth of the land, and on top of that, they get your paycheck every, like, big parts of it. Baby, these people, and you want to continue paying them by being in their system. You want to continue that, and you think that's what the ancestors would want for us. I just ask that you think again. But this is what we want to look at. If indigenous people follow the model of the state sovereignty, they will find that when they attain this goal of state sovereignty he's talking about, that's why being a state national is not good enough for me as an Indian. But you live and learn, right? I started to really understand it. I didn't know because no one was explaining it to me. The ancestors literally had to lead me to people like Anna and to people like this man, Peter DeRico, to understand that you got a ways to go, bro. You got a whole status that you're not even aware of. You don't need state national system. But I learned from the state nationals what sovereignty really is. And I learned from Peter DeRico what sovereignty really is for Indians. And he just told us, if indigenous people follow the model of state sovereignty, they may find that when they attain this goal of state sovereignty, they have sacrificed the underlying goal. What's the goal? Self-defined, self-determination. What Indians don't want that? Okay, then stay where you are in the system. For the Indians who want self-defining and self-determination, but also say over your land, and who gets to come here and who gets to, you can't just bring people to ancestral land without them having a say. And ultimately, the state is on ancestral land, not the other way around. That's what it means to be firstborn. That's what it means to have a birthright. You get first say. But if we continue to want to be in the federal system, in the state system, you don't get a say at all. Now, let me correct that. If you become a state national again, you do have a degree of say. But that's still less say than what a sovereign Indian would, the say that a sovereign Indian would have. We, as first people of the land, have the highest authority, y'all. And I'm starting to think these states were supposed to pay us, y'all. I don't know how y'all feel about that. But why? What would it profit us, if it don't profit us, to have foreigners up on our land and we don't get nothing? What makes us the only people on earth that don't have to make a living and need some kind of compensation for this carte blanche sharing of our birthright land? In other words, yes, I can rent my land. I can even lease my land, but it can never be yours permanently like it belongs to me. Why? The idea behind this is that all foreigners already have a birthright in their foreign lands. I say this all the time. So why should they have more than their fair share? If I give a foreigner my land as an Indian to keep forever and ever, what happens to my generations to come? What do they have? Where are they going to go? This is why land of indigenous people was never meant to be permanently someone else's. The doctrine of discovery was denounced. So the idea that King James had that America and the Americas was his inheritance, maybe before the doctrine of discovery was denounced, you could say that. But again, the doctrine of discovery has been denounced, King James. The only land you're entitled to was the one you was born up on, boo. Not mine. And you came as a colonizer. You weren't invited. So anything you're claiming as an intruder by any common, let's not use that term, common law. When we talk about common law, guys, let's say law of the land, if you will, please, only because common law is a renaming. When you say common law, it belongs to monarchs. Okay, we want to go to the basics. It's called law of the land because it's universal. It's not a term to be owned like common law is a term that is owned. What's common to us might not be common to a monarch, okay? So we don't want that term. Let's throw that away. Let's insist upon calling it law of the land. Okay? That's another word spell. It's a jurisdiction grab, all of that. Okay? So y'all, I'm loving this screen right now. I can't get enough of it because I don't know if I was able to convince you that we're not supposed to be in states, laws, and all of that stuff. But I think if you read this and ponder it, like that's why I'm leaving it on the screen, you will see, okay, so then where does that leave us? You're going to say, Heru, you done took me off the Fed. You done took me out the state. Negro, where you want me to go? I'm going to show you where I want you to go. I'm going to show you again where I want you to go. That's our destination. Final destination, Indians. That's ours, y'all. Isn't it beautiful? Do you not want what belongs to you? It's God-given, y'all. It's God-given. If you don't take this back, you run the risk of the ancestors coming for you. Truly. If you snub your nose at what your foremothers left you, and I'm going to go with foremothers because I think our forefathers was dibbling and dabbling like they always do. Not all, but a lot. Radine, Ambassador Radine, she's an unsung hero in a lot of ways, I have to say. She really gets into the fact that colonization was Negropeans and let's turncoat American Indian males. She's very she tells it this way, and it makes all the sense. I mean, I'm sure there was some females involved, but I think this is mostly it was a boys club thing with Negropeans and American Indian males. So Ambassador Radine, she calls herself. And again, I get a little, a little red flag when I hear their terms like ambassador and stuff. But I know what she's saying is it has validity. So yeah, this is what we're reclaiming. And my idea, which I know I keep touting this idea like like I'm giving away free cheese or something, but I really do. When it came to me, and I know it comes from the ancestors, I thought it was just it just blew me away. It's something to the effect of our IDs can have a map like this on it, but what would happen is we would only color the areas that we were the part of. Like if we were what's the words down here, Siouan or Sioux. Why don't I know how to pronounce that word? Siouan. So we'd only color that part of the map to show where we were, who we were before the states arrived. That's the whole point of this. This is our sovereignty. This is what you're looking at. That's our sovereignty. You've got to have land to be sovereign. And that's why everything in commerce was meant to take you off the land, because then the commercial entity will start to make use of your land resources and you don't have a say because they turned you into one of them. But they are pulling rank over you. That was the whole point. There's no such thing as law of the land if you take the people off the land, right? So then the law of the sea can rule commerce. Then you have commercial entities talking about they holding your land in trust. A trust, as we learned from Anna, is for dead people to leave to their descendants. But if your descendants have been reclassified, then ain't no descendants. So we just get to keep this and talk about what we're going to do for the Native Americans if we feel like it, or the immigrants, the asylum seekers and all of this. They're just having a ball with your birthright, y'all. Having a ball with your birthright and got a whole birthright back home. So that's greed, y'all. That's greed. The greed is really annoying, man. It's completely annoying. But yeah, we have our IDs, which we have a right to create our own. We don't need no federal IDs, nor do we need state IDs. It's trying so hard to bury our political status. They're trying to, once they buried us, y'all, we should have known that they was going to come, the status was going to like act like that never happened either. So that's why it's so scary. It feels so scary when we step out independent, right? But that's what we were before they got here. So it's a scary thing, but we have to remind ourselves, why were we not to be enumerated? Why were we not to be taxed? Because we were not part of their legal framework. That's why. It was a grab when they reclassified us. Every time they change a word from what it was formerly, it's a grab. It's a way of breaching the contract without seeming like you breached the contract. But you did breach the contract. So how would that work? The corporation makes a contract with the Indians. Then agencies of the corporation set about reclassifying Indians into colored. Now the corporation can say, well, we can't have a contract with people that don't exist, can we? So we don't have to worry about that contract no more. we Indians, we've been so brainwashed that we, for the most part, forgot that we're Indians. So now the contract is just there because there's no parties. You can't have a case without no parties. But the only party left is the corporation. And they looking out for number one, baby, not you. That's why they reclassified your ass. So once again, the corporation wins. You lose. Let's proceed with the shenanigans, shall we? Come on, immigrants, come up on in here. We got to keep these Negroes' numbers down some way. We done jabbed them up, and that shit, you know, that'll hopefully start taking effect. But come on in, come on in. Come on in, come on in. Baby, take a load off. Come on in, come on in. Just doing it right in our face, y'all, and then saying that we have to pay for them. I can't. I can't even keep repeating that. My head is gonna explode or something. No, we're not having that. We're not doing that today. No. But that is some bullshit, y'all. That is some straight up bullshit. That is so very fucked up, y'all. You trampling my ass, but then you expect me to pay for the illegal immigrants that you bringing up in here. This corporation is so thirsty to make us disappear that it don't even care that we're basically in the middle of some new level of pandemic. Before they stopped all travel, but now it's like, oh, forget that. We don't care who got the Rona. Just bring them on in. Bring them in. You know, so all of a sudden now that's not an issue, right? Because everybody done got the damn jab, right? So we good. No need for no high level stay at home now. We give it a couple of months or years, and hopefully, if things go as planned, there won't be so many American Indians. And with all the new ethnic groups that we're bringing that are all non people of color, maybe we can finally make America anyway, this I wanted to go over. I think I did good. I thought it was more than 2 hours me running my mouth, but I think I covered a lot of ground. So I think I'm doing okay with time, I think. Okay. So why are we looking at Mr. Dred Scott and his wife in an email that was sent to me? Yeah, that's my I don't want to broadcast, but I had a version of this where, let me see, that I had my personal information blocked out. But this was an email sent to me from an organization called Move to Amend. And Move to Amend is trying to amend the Constitution so that corporations that we were talking about just now are no longer considered persons. So Move to Amend understands that when you make a corporation a person, you've just pretty much overstepped the voice of real men and women, right? How so? Because a corporation has a lot more bargaining power than a mere man or woman, right? When a corporation backs a president or any political person, it's very likely that that person is going to win because they got a shitload of money from a corporation. That's, I mean, generally speaking. This is why you would not want a corporation to be considered a person, because it has a lot more resources than a mere man or woman who probably has a family to feed and all of that. And as the system would have it, always forever struggling to make ends meet, right? That's how we do, that's how the system do us, right? So Move to Amend has an amendment that they're trying to get passed so that corporations are not any longer seen as a person. I used to support Move to Amend. I have since now, with all the education that Anna has provided me with, Anna writes, and Peter Dorico, I now have a different viewpoint on the authority that Move to Amend would have, and they have none. Move to Amend is going to be made up of United States citizens, right? United States citizens are debt slaves that don't have a voice due to that big debt on their back, right? So they don't have constitutional rights anymore, so they can't change the Constitution. I started to realize that it is a futile endeavor, that Move to Amend, all they do is ask for more and more donations. But baby, it's going to take more than donations. You're going to have you're going to have to repatriate to have a voice. You're going to have to become a state national. Now, they can't become American Indians. Well, a lot of them. It's a mixed group of races that still think that they have rights as United States citizens. They don't. They have rights that are alienable, can be taken. They got benefits and privilege. Okay, that's what it boils down to. So no, you will not be chained to the Constitution because you just don't have that standing. You have to be sovereign to do something like that, and you're not as a United States citizen. Again, you got that huge debt on your back, and until that's paid, you are not sovereign. Your what do you call it? Predators are calling the shots. That's what's really going on in the land of the free to be stupid. Okay, that's what we have now been reduced to, the land of the free to be stupid. That's what you're free to be, and that's works for the federal system. That is just fine. Okay, you are free to be as stupid as you like. We'll help you to become a whole moron or imbecile, whatever is the lowest on the dummy scale. Okay, we're going to help you reach that goal. Okay, so they wrote me. They said, Anthony, on this day, oh man, so that means we got to look at the, okay, so I'm trying not to show my email, but you know what? It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. That's all right. Ooh, ooh, ooh. There it is again. I didn't. Okay. Let's see. That. Okay. So it was sent. Okay. I'm gonna stop the share for a minute. You already got my email, but I just don't. I still feel like I want to have a little bit of a little bit of. Let's see. I want to try to. I know it's already been shown, but we still want to be a little discreet with our personal information, right? So it was let me erase it. Okay. We'll return to our screen in just a minute. Sorry for break for station identification. This is the station of Heru. Okay. But we shall be back in a minute. Okay. Let's do this now. Let's do this. Let's block out the personal information, it's just, we do what we got. So, okay. So, all right. Okay. So now it's been blocked out. So now let's, uh-oh. What I do? What I did? I hope I didn't stop. Okay. Okay. I didn't. Okay. I thought I stopped the whole video. Okay. So now we can show. This was sent to me March 6th of this year, 2023. So now I can read to you. On this day, 167 years ago, so it was March 6th, 167 years ago. I think it was 1856 is when the decision was made. On this day, 167 years ago, the Supreme Court handed down one of the most infamous decisions, Dred Scott versus Sanford, in which they ruled that the Constitution was not meant to include citizenship for people of African descent, whether enslaved or free. So let's highlight that. Okay. The Dred Scott versus Sanford decision rules that the Constitution, come on now. Wait, where's my highlighting go? Why you ain't highlighting? Okay, I have to turn it into that, I guess. Okay. Is it gonna work now? Yeah. The Constitution was not meant to include citizenship for people of African descent, whether enslaved or free. Let's make sure we got the C in there. Okay, now we want to make some, okay. Not, the Constitution was what? Not meant to include people of African descent. People. The Constitution was not, keyword, not keyword. Keyword. Key. And that funny electronic writing. That looks so bad, right? Come on. Why can't I get a decent D? Okay. Keyword. Let's get a decent D. Okay. Keyword. Okay, it's a little better. So clearly we see that according to move to amend, that show, oh, that is from, yeah, move to amend. So there you see now. Ugh, I'm on. Stop it. This was from the organization I told you about, move to amend. So according to them, and most people who refer to the Dred Scott decision, as we see, this is the Dred Scott decision. We understood that citizenship was not meant for people of African descent, whether enslaved or free. And there's Dred Scott himself, so we know that this is the Dred Scott decision because we've seen his face before, right? So that's what we want to focus on, but let's read a little further. Dred Scott and his wife, Harriet, had separately petitioned for their freedom after their owner had moved them to the free state of Missouri. After consolidating their cases and winning in a lower court, the owner appealed. A state court ruled in the owner's favor, and it was then brought to the Supreme Court. In a 7-2 ruling, Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, not only set a precedent that people of African descent were not, again, that word not, entitled to constitutional rights, but also that Congress's Missouri Compromise of 1820, which had banned expansion of slavery into many Northwest territories, was illegal because it was an unconstitutional denial of white people's Fifth Amendment right to keep their property, i.e., Black human beings, and declared Black people had no rights, which the white man was bound to respect. This is what Pan-Africans will never understand. They just don't get it. They have to see it somewhere. I don't know what, if anything, could change their mind, except maybe a higher amount of payment than what the system is paying them to talk that bullshit. Why is it bullshit? Why is Pan-Africanism bullshit? We're going to call Pan-Africans out for being full of bullshit. Here's why, in my book. Here's why. If you tell me that the entire planet started out with people of color, then you got to say what you mean and mean what the fuck you say. So again, your thesis statement is that the entire Earth was populated first by people of color. This is what you Pan-Africans be saying, right? So then how in the fuck all of a sudden is America not included in all lands of the earth? Did you forget that you the one that told us that every continent was first populated by people of color? Why do you guys, why do you suddenly go full retard, full bipolar, full imbecile idiot when it comes to America? So your own rhetoric speaks to your deception. You want to have it two ways, just for the sake of calling every person of color African. You will go against your own rhetoric that the entire planet and all the lands upon it was populated by people that look like so-called Black people. Except for America. I never saw the part where y'all said except America until y'all started talking this bullshit about Native Americans being first. You done forgot your own script. So that's why we're going to say, you know what? Y'all is trifling as fuck and full of shit. Full of shit. That's some bullshit, okay? I just have to say it like I feel it. That's some bullshit, y'all. And y'all gonna pay for that bullshit. For being so damn confusing. And hopefully it'll be a payment that you enjoy. And what would that be? A one-way ticket back home to Africa. So y'all could stop giving this continent so much lip service and put your money where your mouth is and go back home, since that's your home. Now we done sidetracked again. But we're going to get back on track. This is interesting because this is actually saying something opposite of what we're about to look at. But I still, let's just put it this way. Somewhere in the ball of confusion, we have, it's not saying that we don't have rights. What it's saying is that we have no rights as a Black, which the white man is bound to respect. Okay? Our rights are subject to change according to what they're saying the white man decides. Now, mind you, it was Black nobility that started this whole bullshit. So clearly they were hoping to use the white man as the fall guy, so that we never come looking for they nigga ass, right? King James was a whole Black man. Let's get over it, okay? Let's stop fucking around. Let's stop fucking around. He's the one that created the states on the land. He's the one that brought a European corporation model here, which basically was a Trojan horse. And the corporation is a slave maker. When we have Indians saying that you're working, your job is slavery. Okay, do you know what made us that? The corporation did. So when you say that you want to stay in the corporation, what are you saying? Stay a slave, Indians. Right? Yeah, because Indians are admitting that working a job is slavery, right? Okay, so then why you want us to stay in a corporation then? You know, that's all I'm saying. It's not me. It's with me interpreting what you said, okay? For Indians who said that corporation is slavery. Let's not forget what we said, because it was the truth. Okay, so why are we reading this? Why are you showing us this case, this Dred Scott? Well, I've been talking about this for, it's going on like 2 months now. Still ain't did the video. This is gonna be it. Okay. This is gonna be it. So even though this last part has confused me a little bit, but it's chaos. This system is chaos. It says one thing and means another, and then the legalese helps it to pull that crap off, you know, redefining words. Okay. So, but the interesting thing is that we're going to read from the Dred Scott decision itself. That's to show you how mind programming works. So they're telling us that in the time of Dred Scott, the United States Supreme Court said that the Constitution was not meant to include citizenship for people of African descent, whether enslaved or free. What they intended for us was civil rights. That's the rights where they started calling you basically Black and all of that. Because it was then everything became about Black this and blackity black. So civil rights kind of it was Negro, and then it became Black, I believe. Okay. So I want you to please remember what we have underlined here as we read from the Dred Scott decision. They're saying that, again, on this day, March 6th, 167 years ago, the Supreme Court handed down one of their most infamous decisions, Dred Scott versus Sanford, in which they ruled that the Constitution was not meant to include citizenship for people of African descent, whether enslaved or free. So now we're going to go to the Dred Scott decision itself. Now, I don't have all the pages because well, I don't have it up here. I had a section of the Dred Scott decision. This case is over 200 pages. But let's see what we can get here. You can see it says, it is the Dred Scott decision. We just read what the Supreme Court's ruling said, right? The Constitution was not meant for people of African descent, whether slave or free. Okay, so let's start here. The Supreme Court of North Carolina, in the case of the state versus Manuel, had declared the law of that state, North Carolina, on this subject in terms which I believe to be as sound law in the other states I have enumerated, as it was with North Carolina. So we're talking about North Carolina. And he's saying whoever's commenting right now is saying that the laws of North Carolina was the same as other states that had similar laws to North Carolina. So according to those laws of this state, says Judge Gaston, in delivering the opinion of the court, all human beings within it, the state of North Carolina, who are not slaves, fall within one of two classes. Okay, those who are not slaves fall within one of two classes. Whatever distinctions may have existed in the Roman laws between citizens and free inhabitants, they are unknown to our institutions. Before our revolution, all free persons born within the dominions of the King of Great Britain. See who started it? The King of Great Britain, right? That was King James, right? Whatever their color or complexion, were native-born British subjects. Those born out of his allegiance were aliens. Slavery did not exist in England, but it did in the British colonies. Slaves were not, in legal parlance, persons, but property. The moment the incapacity, the disqualification of slavery was removed, they became persons and were then either British subjects or not British subjects, according as they were or were not born within the allegiance of the British king. Upon the Revolution, no other change took place in the laws of North Carolina than was consequent on the transition from a colony dependent on a European king to a free and sovereign state. Slaves remained slaves. British subjects in North Carolina became North Carolina freemen. Foreigners, until made members of the state, remained aliens. Slaves manumitted or set free here became freemen. And therefore, if born within North Carolina, are citizens of North Carolina. And all free persons born within the state are born citizens of the state. Citizens of the United States, you said? No. I said citizens of the state, not the United States. We're talking about North Carolina state, not the United States. The United States, although it sounds very fancy, is strictly the District of Columbia. Okay. Slaves manumitted here became freemen. So this is just the opposite of all this other stuff we read up here, right? It says slaves manumitted in North Carolina became freemen. And therefore, if born within North Carolina, are citizens of North Carolina. And all free persons born within the state are born citizens of the state. I guess what I'm seeing here, because this was a little confusing, but we'll read further and it gets much more clearer. This what I think I highlighted this because I want to pinpoint that they're talking about citizens of the state. So what is a citizen of the state? A state national. So they are born citizens of the state, not the United States. Citizens of the state. And in this case, we're talking about the state. Well, we want to say we're talking about North Carolina state, because state of North Carolina is a franchise of the feds. It is not the same as North Carolina state. That's what it was originally. It was called North Carolina state officially. But when the feds start land grabbing and identity thefting, they created something called state of North Carolina. And all of us think it's the same thing as North Carolina state, but it's not. It's something they created so they have jurisdiction upon state. Okay. So what we're reading, it is sounding like, if I were to make sense of this, if you were born in North Carolina, you were a citizen of North Carolina. I think, okay, let's not do too much thinking. Let's just read further, because here we got a glimpse of what I'm saying. Because we just read that slaves were not citizen. That's what we read. Let's go back. The Constitution was not meant to include citizenship for people of African descent, whether enslaved or free. So then we read here, slaves manumitted here in North Carolina became freemen. Therefore, if born within North Carolina, are citizens. But you just told me that, what did you just tell me? Constitution was not meant to include citizenship for slaves, right? African descended slave, whatever. But here, that's not what you're saying. In North Carolina state, that wasn't exactly the case, right? Freeman. Okay, so here's get tricky. Freeman. I'm not going to get too lost in this, y'all, because again, it's a little confusing because now I'm starting to wonder. They didn't say African up here, right? They just saying slaves. So this might not be the best paragraph to read. So let's go to the next one, if you know what I'm saying. Because they're not saying African there. They're just saying if you were a slave. Okay. So let's read this. It is true beyond all controversy that persons of color, so now we got color. Okay, so now we're talking, right? Descended from African slaves. Okay, so now we got the African. Okay, this is what I should have just read this and kept it at that. Were by that constitution made what? Citizens of the state. Isn't that in exact opposition to, oops, we're rolling, this persons of color and of African descent, whatever. Okay, people of African descent, whether they were not meant to be citizens. But we just read here in I guess it's Massachusetts, because it's Massachusetts up here, was not consistent with the natural rights. Okay. So it is true beyond all controversy that persons of color descended from African slaves were by that constitution in Massachusetts made citizens of the state of Massachusetts. And such of them as have had the necessary qualifications have held and exercised the elective franchise as citizens from that time to present. What are we saying here? What is the point of reading this? Because I really shouldn't have read that first part. I should have just jumped to here. But I wanted you to see someone that is a citizen of the state, but they did not say the United States. Here we get into the race in this second paragraph. So this is the Dred Scott decision. Then how come we're reading that at the time of the Dred Scott decision, that it was true beyond all controversy, so this is unquestionably true, that what? Persons of color descended from African slaves were by that constitution of Massachusetts made citizens of that state. We just said that I thought that the Dred Scott decision said that they couldn't be citizens. So ultimately, what I learned, we're going to read some more just to solidify this, what we just read, is that 5 of the 13 states did have citizenship for African slaves or descendants of African slaves. 5 of the states had citizenship for descendants of African slaves. 5 of the 13 states had citizenship for descendants of African slaves. So then what kind of citizenship did they have? Well, we just saw in the first paragraph. They were citizens of that state, not citizens of the United States. They could only be citizen to one state, right? When you really break it down, it makes all the sense of the world, because who can be a citizen of all United States? What does that even make sense? You're only living in one state. Why is it necessary to be a citizen of all the 50 states? It's a misnomer, right? It's a wordplay. It's a semantic world, right? You only need to be citizen to one state because the states are already in a union. The union allows you to travel, or, you know, you're part of a union already. So that is, excuse me. you get to choose which state you want to live in. Okay. So they did set us up because basically, if you were a person of color who was seen to be a descendant of African slave, there was 5 states you could live in. Okay. The other ones you might not want to live in. Okay. But you had a choice. I think that's just a way where they got us to leave the South. You know, they had to have something in place for us to leave the South. But again, even becoming part of the states, as Mr. Jericho told us, we sacrificed self-determination. Okay. And self-definition by being part of any state. So we as American Indians would not even want to be state citizens in these states because we're sacrificing self-definition, self-determination. This is what we read. Let me see if we can bring it back up. Here. If indigenous peoples follow the model of state sovereignty, they may find that when they attain this goal, they have sacrificed the underlying goal of self-defined self-determination, becoming a state citizen, or also known as a state national. An American Indian is still not making the mark. You're falling short of your full sovereignty. This is what a lawyer is telling you, not some YouTuber. This is what a lawyer, he's basically telling us American Indians, y'all better go for your sovereignty that is not state sanctioned or state created, I should say, or federal created. All you tribes that got your recognition from the state, I'm sorry to say that you missed the mark. Now, this is not, don't get mad at me. I just read with comprehension what a lawyer said. Are you a lawyer? You tribes out there that are going to get upset when you hear somebody like Heru say that we missed the mark again by coming up under a state jurisdiction? This, again, Peter D'Erico, we might have to watch his video. Hopefully that'll be the icing on this little cake we trying to bake up in here. But he's going to tell you in his own mouth if we watch this video and if my sound feels like working today. Okay. This is a lawyer telling you this, not some rabid, misguided Moorish Indian, because I'm not Moorish. I do not push. Did y'all see my video about Moors? Okay. Okay. So look for that video so you could know that I'm not pushing anything Moorish when I talk about Indian sovereignty. Okay. Nothing about Moorish paperwork. No more. I'm not mentioning any Moorish temple because this has nothing to do with Moorishness. This we're reading again from someone who became a lawyer. Now, a lot of these Moorish dudes are not even lawyers. Okay, so that's why they would get it wrong when they go in court talking about whatever. they would get. This is a lawyer, okay? He's not going to get it wrong when he tells you if indigenous people follow the model of state sovereignty or try to get their sovereignty from a state or recognition from a state, especially the states as they are right now, little franchises of the feds, they may find that when they attain this goal, they have sacrificed the underlying goal. Well, he's assuming that our goal is self-determination. But it's apparently that's not the goal of every Indian. A lot of Indians still want to be led by the hand by the colonizer because they feel that we can't govern ourselves. Well, we would have to do it first. You know, how do you know? You know, how does any one person know that all of us are not capable of governing ourselves? That it just doesn't even make sense to even think like that. Then why even have a tribe if we can't govern ourselves? Why even try to have a tribe? We're not capable. You just stay a Negro and stay colored and stay in the corporation. And they already fixed it for incapable people. The corporation was made for people that are not capable of governing themselves. So why have a tribe at all, right? That's kind of not fair to believe that only you as a tribe leader is capable and no one else, you know. And again, this is not meant to be personal. I'm using everything to for Indians who may get it wrong. This is just what do you call it? To show and be able to make distinctions that need to be made with some of what some Indians might think. This is not personal by any stretch. This is a free for all who apply to. Trust me. Why would I want to single out anybody when the message clearly is for anyone who, you know, this is not personal. You live and you learn, and then you gotta use what you learn. Whoever voice it came from, you gotta use it to help people understand, make some distinction. So none of this is personal. This is things that I'm aware of, and I ain't say nobody's name. So it don't need to be taken as personal. So back to the Dred Scott decision, where we found out, to our shock and amazement, that, oh my gosh, there were state citizens in the time of Dred Scott. Because what? It is true beyond all controversy that persons of color who descended from African slaves were, by that Constitution, and we're talking about the Constitution of Massachusetts, made citizens of the state, not the United States. This was part of why I want to read this, is to let us know that there's a difference between a United States citizen and a state citizen. Anna Wrights is the woman that learned everything about the difference between a state citizen, which is non-existent today, except for the one she's pulling back into their proper jurisdiction. There's a difference between them and United States citizens. A United States citizen is a debt slave, a beast of burden that all debts are placed upon. A state citizen is sovereign through the state. An Indian is sovereign through birthright. That's why a state citizen, state sovereignty would not work for us. because then we'd only be sovereign in this state or that state. No, we sovereign everywhere we go. We sovereign. Why? Because of this map right here. Now, at this point, let's say a Sioux Indian might want to allow a Ojibwa Indian free passage after all we done been through. But it would have to be that an agreement, not carte blanche. In other words, I come to your border here, you Sioux Indian, I let you know that I know this is your territory. May I have passage with your permission? Or may I set up whatever, blah, 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 with your permission? Not like what we had going on over here with the Iroquois, who said, look, you Algonquins, I ain't trying to do no deals with you. I'm going to take all your land by getting with the British monarchy. I ain't asking you for shit. I am taking it with the help of my big brother, my savior, the British monarchy. Now you can get thee gone to Canada, up here in Canada. That's where, as you see, we were relegated to. Now they'll talk all day, every day about Algonquins being in Canada. You will never hear about my folks over here, right? Because effectively, the Iroquois have taken over this. Now, right now, this, according to their political setup, this is now all Iroquois. Why? Because the British sailed over here, right? Let's look at this now. They came in their little Santa Maria, what the fuck ya, whatever boat they came in. Santa fuck ya. And they came over here. We do a little line. Let's do a little line. They came over here bringing the blood of Jesus, right? So we make it red, okay? La 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 la. La, 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 la. Ooh, this ocean is so deep and so wide. Ooh, land ho, land ho. So, boom. Chief Powhatan, what you want? What Chief Powhatan said, what you want? Well, we come in the name of Jesus, and we would like to be settle some of our colonies in your territory. Oh, well, how about I give you some stuff over here? Let's just, for example, you take that, you can take that. And I'll provide you with what you need, but I'm the chief here on this side of the Atlantic. And these people's like, what he just say to us? And Chief Powhatan said, yeah, this is my land. Does your God not understand that? No, he don't. Oh, okay. Well, maybe he will learn through our traditions. We will help him to help you to see. Yeah, whatever, nigga. So they said that under their breath. King Powhatan didn't hear that part. So then they come, you know, like, let's make the meat. They came like, what do they call themselves? The smallpox. They came like, and all of a sudden it was these pop. They came with their smallpox, pop. Right? They multiplying on our land, whatever, however, whatever. Then they learn of these Negroes over here called Iroquois. And they say, let's go a little further in over here. Hi, how you doing? And the Iroquois say, hi, how you doing? We good. We just have a problem, though. We heard that you don't get along with these motherfuckers called Algonquins, do you? No, the fuck we don't. And so what how can I be of service? Well, what if you and I could work to send these Negroes up into Canada, and they become known as Indians from Canada? Could you help us do that? Well, I could gather up my little 5 nations, and maybe we, you know, by ourselves we can't do it. But if we get the Sanchaka, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, the Daida, the Mohawk, and the Hurrians, or whatever, maybe. Well, don't worry about that. I got plenty of guns just for you. You got what? Check this out. Bam, boom, they shot, killed the animals and stuff. This is what you could use on these niggas over behind us, these fucking Algonquins that don't want to have all their land. But you want their land too, right? Yes, we do. Good. Let's get the rest of these niggas over here and move them up to Canada. And then in our history books, all we got to talk about is how these Algonquins originated in Canada, but not the Northeast Woodland. You will become king of the Northeast Woodland, and I'll be your best friend. How about that? And then the Iroquois is like, you know, that worked mighty fine. And then we create some narrative about a turtle that grow bigger, 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 bigger. And that be our spiritual story. A turtle? Yes. Y'all want to use a turtle? Even the British thought that was ridiculous. But a turtle. Well, wait a minute now. Y'all gonna live on a turtle? Yes. But why you want a turtle though? Well, like we said, the turtle grow bigger, 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 bigger. And like when we take these Algonquin land, we gonna get bigger, bigger, bigger. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That okay, whatever. This don't make no sense to me. But if you like turtles, then fine. Then yes, we like Turtle Island. And did you say that all the Indians of North America believe in a turtle? Yes. You sure about that now? Well, we are the new spokesman for all Indians, right? Yeah. So, any questions about the turtle? No questions. We get it. We got you. Gotcha. But we like the turtle too because the turtle just swim around in the ocean, and we Moors basically, and we're gonna pull you. Well, not well. They said not you Iroquois, but all your brothers. They're going to be swimming in the ocean on your turtle, but you're going to have all the land, okay? All right. So that's what happened, you know. This is how Algonquins became, like the world forgot that this was Algonquin territory. But don't worry, Heru is here to remind you that, see that green, all of that? That belonged to Algonquin. So basically, the Algonquins would have profited a lot from the trade that with any foreigner because they won the coastline. Now, the Iroquois, they weren't that pitiful as they thought they were because they had this waterway. Now, if somebody wanted to do trade with them, they just come down this waterway and y'all had access to get out to the ocean, whatever. But that wasn't enough for them. They wanted to take over Algonquin land. And I think they got some turncoat Algonquins to co-sign on that. But now all of them are under state. And the whole point of doing this segment in this video is to tell you that a legal professional done told you that if you follow the model of state sovereignty, meaning that you're going to be in a state and not your linguistic land that we just looked at, you might find that when you attain this goal of being a state recognized or whatever, you have sacrificed. What does sacrifice mean? Killed the goal of self-defined self-determination. Okay, so we just want to revisit that, make sure it's a little more clear. Let's go back to Dred Scott decision. So there we got one example. You could read that. I done read it too many times, but the idea is, I thought you said there was no such thing as United States citizen. No, there wasn't, because it was a state citizen. And there were states that allowed for people of quote unquote what they call us African descent to be citizens. That's why Dred Scott was trying to, he knew, right, that some states had this. Okay, so let's move down. The Constitution of New York gave the right to vote to every male inhabitant who shall have resided, making what? No distinction between, no discrimination between free colored persons and others. Here we have bam number 2. So New York, they had people of color who were had the right to vote, right? Regardless of being a colored person, colored whatever. So again, in the time of Dred Scott, there were people who had constitutional rights, right? Let's read it again. The Constitution of New York gave the right to vote. So that's a constitutional right, right? To every male inhabitant who shall have resided, making no discrimination between free, colored, free. So that means you could have been a slave, right? If you free color person now. And others. There was no distinction. Okay? No distinction. Okay, so New York, by its Constitution of 1820, required colored persons, okay, to have some qualifications as prerequisites for voting, which white persons need not possess. Okay. So they had a little bit of something going on. And New Jersey, by its present constitution, restricts the right to vote to white male citizens. So New Jersey, they restricted the right to vote to white males. But these changes can have no other effect upon the present inquiry, except to show that before they were made, no such restrictions existed, and colored in common with white persons were not only citizens of those states, but entitled to the elective franchise on the same qualifications as white persons. So they're saying before 1820, these changes had no effect. Wait. No restrictions existed. So at some point, no restrictions existed. And colored in common with white were not only citizens of those states, but entitled to elective franchise. So at what point did it change? Like, I guess that's one way, because they're making it like there was a time, okay, and in New Jersey, by its present constitution, so this, as was 1856, present would have been 1856. Its present constitution restricts the right to vote. But these changes can have no other effect upon the present inquiry, except to show that before they were made, the restrictions, no such restrictions existed, and colored in common with white were not only citizens of those states, but entitled to the elective franchise on the same qualifications as white persons. It's saying more than I needed to say, but you get the conflict here. I thought there was no citizens that were colored or descendants of Africans. I thought they had no constitutional right to be citizens. But here we're saying, no, some of the states did allow them. So let's go down. The fact that free persons of color were citizens of some of the several states. This is the fact that free persons of color were citizens of some of the 5 of them, to be exact, because I forgot which ones they were, but some of the original 13 states, free colored persons before and at the time of the formation of the Constitution were citizens of those. See, this is what we got to understand. I think a lot of people don't think that there was a different kind of citizen that wasn't a United States citizen. Actually, this was the better one. The state citizen was better than the United States citizen because, as you see, they were allowed to have these freedoms. So again, in some of the original 13 states, 5, I believe, to be exact, free colored persons before and at the time of the formation of the Constitution were citizens of those states. Free colored persons were citizens of some of the 13 states. In some of the states, as we have seen, colored persons were among those qualified by law to act on this subject. These colored persons were not only included in the body of the people of the United States, by whom the Constitution was ordained and established, but in at least 5. So we got there the number 5 of the states. They had the power to act and doubtless did act by their suffrages upon the question of its adoption. It would be strange if we were to find that instrument, anything in that instrument, the Constitution, anything which deprived of their citizenship any part of the people of the United States who were among those by whom it was established. I can find nothing in the Constitution which proprio vigore deprives of their citizenship any class of persons who were citizens of the United States at the time of its adoption. That's where the language gets funky. Everything we read now is talking about state citizens, and then here it uses the term United States, citizens of the United States, but it would have to be using this term very lightly. You know why? Why? This was in 1856. If you're using the term United States citizen in 1856, when Dred Scott decision was made, we have to remember that there was no such thing on paper or in the law about a United States citizen. Why? Because they didn't exist until 1868 with the creation of the 14th Amendment United States citizen. So when you see this term, just remember that they're just throwing it in there. It means absolutely nothing. Why? Because this didn't exist till 1868. A United States citizen officially, legally, on paper, did not exist until 1868. So let's see. Let's do the calculation. Okay, so let's go to our handy dandy calculator if we can find it, please. Where is my calculator? There it is. Okay, so let's 1868 minus 1856. So Dred Scott took place 12 years before the invention of the United States citizen or the 14th Amendment citizen, which is the United States citizen. Before 1868, when Dred Scott took place, we are talking about state citizens or state nationals, not United States citizens that came about in 1868. So in the time of Dred Scott, a person of color or even a person of African descent or said to be of African descent could be a citizen in five of, here we go, five of the states. So they were a state by state type of citizenship, not a United States citizenship. It depended on which state they lived in or were born in. So they could only be a citizen of that state. They could not go to a state where they had no citizenship because they would not be recognized. That's why citizenship was done originally on a state by state basis. Then the United States misnomer is created, and they create a different type of citizen that is not attached to a state, but it is attached to the District of Columbia that invented it. That is the United States citizen, not a state citizen. Again, in the 13 states, 5 of them allowed Negroes to be citizens. What does that mean? That means it was on a state by state basis, not a United States, but a state, a singular state. Which of the states allowed for citizenship of descendants of alleged African slaves? Or should we say Negropeans? But then that they did want to grab American Indians. So of course they're going to allow us to be, if we like migrate and leave our southern lands, and we get tricked into thinking that we're going to be treated like everybody else. But all of a sudden, the 1868 United States citizen is created, and now we're in a completely different jurisdiction. We are no longer sovereign. The United States citizen cannot question the national debt. That means they're going to heap the entire nation's debt on the backs of United States citizens. At this point, the reason why ANA exists is because there are no state citizens any longer. Everyone was quietly pirated into being United States citizens, when back in 1856 and up to 1867, there were only citizens of a state, not the United States, but whichever state allowed them of the 5 states to be citizens. I hope you understand what we are reading and what I am saying. There were citizens in the time of Dred Scott who were persons of color and descendants of African slaves. There were citizens of 5 of the 13 states who were persons of color. The other, what is it? There's 12, no, there are 13 states. So the other 8 states did not allow descendants of African slaves, allegedly, or persons of color to be citizens. When the corporation recreated itself as the United States when previously they were the United States of America. They began to move to create a new type of citizenship, the 14th Amendment citizen. When they did that, they made all Americans debt slaves. You either get it or you refuse to get it. I don't know any other way to explain. You're looking at it in front of your eyes. Let's go further. For those who still don't get it, I think we have more highlights here. Oh, was that it? That looks like that was all I. Wait, nope, got one more. And as free colored persons were then citizens of at least 5 states, and so in every sense, part of the people of the United States. See, again, they're using this word, but remember, there was no United States citizen. There were only citizens of at least 5 states. So that means it wasn't carte blanche United States citizens. It was only 5 of the 13 states. 5. Understand that means that they were state citizens, not United States citizens. So in every sense, and so in every sense, these people were part of the United States. They were among those for whom and whose posterity the Constitution was ordained and established. If this doesn't, without a shadow of doubt, show you, let's just read it again. And as free colored persons were then citizens of at least 5 states. Did we say earlier that there was no such thing as citizenship for colored persons or descendants of African slaves in the time of Dred Scott decision? This is the Dred Scott decision. It appears that the issue was Dred Scott was in a slave state. And when he moved, he thought that he should be free. I agree with the brother to, but this type of citizenship was only apparently granted if you were born in the free state. I guess that was the argument. Could he get citizenship? And they're saying that in 5 of the states he could. But I'm wondering now, did you have to be born there? Regardless, the fact remains, there were state citizens in the time of Dred Scott who were people of color, even allegedly descendants of African slaves. And that's the last of our highlights. I'm pretty sure that was it. This is all I need. I didn't need the whole 200 pages or more of the Dred Scott decision. I wanted you to see that there are 2 different types of citizens. If you're not an American Indian, you have option to be 2 citizens: a United States citizen, which is a debt slave, or a state citizen, which is what Anna is doing a great job, I think, of getting people to go back to this original. This existed in the time of Dred Scott. So it was the original type of citizen. It was a state citizen, not a United States citizen. Indians were by birthright not part of this mess. We got tricked into it They did everything they could to assist in the dissolution of our tribes, the erasing of our language from our minds, because that's what really created our linguistic lines. But if you don't speak the language anymore, so you don't need a linguistic map. So they did everything to erase us from the face of the earth and make us like we're just here walking, but they could do anything to us. That's what a slave is. A class of people that they don't have any rights. You could do whatever you want, and then they wonder why they can't get justice, because you done reclassified the highest sovereigns on the land into the lowest slave fodder possible. This is what the federal government did. But some of our Indians still want to have them as their fearless leader. You know what? Those who want that, I guess they'll end up getting that. But those who want the real deal, that the birthright deal, maybe we're going to get that as well. This is what the ancestors exist for. Can't be nothing else. Can't be nothing else. I had a timeline of Dred Scott timeline, but I don't think I want to go through all of them. I think I just want to show that it did have a happy ending, because I don't think a lot of us hear about how things turned out for Dred Scott after he won and then lost again. But I'm not going to read everything. You could he was born in Virginia, 1795. So by that time, we had been reclassified by the 1790 census in Virginia, where he was born. Right? So he was born in the very state where the reclassification began. That reclassification was meant to turn him into an African descendant, slave, or whatever. Okay, so that's interesting, the timing. The Constitution was made in 1787, the original one, but the reclassification took place in the 1790 census. Wow, that was only 2 years before they started reclassifying. 1787 was the original Constitution. 1790. Is that 4 years or 2 years? Let's just say it was a short time that we had to be sovereign in the states. Once they took us out of our tribes, and made us into states, state entities, Well, let me see. So 1795 minus 1790. 5 years. 5 years. Wait. Yeah, we were reclassified 5 years before Dred Scott was born. We were reclassified as colored on the 1790 census. So yeah, why did I do that? Actually, that one was easy. From 1790 census to 1795, that's 5 years. What I really wanted was the 1787. That's what I meant to do. I'm not that bad at math. 1787. No. No. Let's go. No. 1795 minus 1787. So 8 years after we were declared, when Negropeans were declared free persons. Indians were supposed to remain Indians throughout all of this. Indians not taxed, Indians not enumerated. But then they start mixing us in with the Negropeans. Okay. So anyway, let's just, you could read that. Maybe I'll put a link. I always say I'm gonna put a link and I never do, but you might want to see this timeline. But for now, I just want to show you how things ended for him. Where we go? Where we go? Where did he? Okay, wait. Yeah, right. It happened before he died. So here it is. So by 1857, Dred Scott and his wife were granted their freedom. In 1857. Now the case took place in, I believe, 1856. Let's see. That decision was 1856. But wait. They saying 1857. So the same year, they're saying 1857. I thought Dred Scott was 1856. No, maybe that was the lower court. Maybe that was the lower court. Was that the Supreme Court? Maybe that wasn't the Supreme Court. Okay. Okay. Wait, no. The second argument it is 1856. Okay, so the argument is presented to the Supreme Court in 1856. And then in 1857, court decides that freed African Americans are not citizens. Interesting. When we just saw that they were, right? According to those 5 states. Also, enslaved African Americans are property and as a result have no rights. Also, the ruling found that Congress cannot prohibit enslavement from spreading into the Western territory. Congress does a lot of other shit. I don't know why they couldn't stop the slavery from spreading. They're the ones that didn't they? What was it? Manifest Destiny. They could spread themselves, but they couldn't stop slavery spreading. They could spread themselves to all the land of west of the Mississippi, but they couldn't stop the spread of slavery. If you spread yourself all around, I don't see why you couldn't. Supreme Court. So following in May 1857, following the controversial trial, Irene Emerson remarried and gave the Scott family to another family of enslavers, the Blows. Peter Blow granted the Scotts their freedom. Then, so Scott was freed in May of 1857, and then he died in 1858. So he had 1 year of his freedom. It's a little bittersweet. I mean, all that fighting to only have, to then die a year later, or maybe it wasn't even the whole fucking year, It just says 1858. So when in 1858? That means he could have had like no more than 6 months, right? Because June, July, August, September, October, November, December, that's June, July, August, September, October, November, December. 6 months after June is 1858. So it depends on when he died in 1858. It's interesting though. So that's the last bullet point. In 1997, Dred Scott and Harriet Robinson are inducted into the St. Louis Walk of Fame. All right. What do we have next? That's the whole Dred Scott thing. And I think, this is a long video. Maybe we'll look at this other stuff in another video, because this really was what I had promised and I never got to. And now we did, I think. So I'm going to end this video now because it's over 3 hours. And come on now, we don't want to make these videos so damn long. We had other slides. And maybe, we'll look at them next time. Thank you for watching. We want to end on our birthright. And we're going to erase all the shenanigans because we're going back to what we came from. When you go back to your roots, this is where your roots are. If you're an American Indian, this is all that matters to us. We don't have to go by state. We have to reclaim this. Now, the states will be there, but we won't be operating in the states. This is our lines of delineation. Okay? This is what we are resurrecting. If we mean business, and if we are serious about our birthright, and if we are serious about our sovereignty, you won't find it in the state. We already saw what Peter D'Erico said. Now, I did say that we would hear Mr. D'Erico. Maybe that is what we'll do. So let's take a pause. I'll be right back. I'm going to stop the share for a minute and pull. I don't think I did this last time. Uh-oh. Okay, so I'm back. I had to take a break, but I think we will attempt to hear the words of Mr. D'Erico himself. I hope the sound is okay, but I want you to hear from the legal professional himself, Mr. D'Erico. And once again, this will close out. I'll say it now in case we just leave it with his words. Maybe I'll say now, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed our little video. And I want to play Mr. D'Erico, but I want to wish you peace, health, wealth, your land back, your identity back, your full sovereignty back, because you deserve it. All your rights of authority on the land. We don't have to share it. If America doesn't get it right, it won't ever get right. America is the only place where we can set the precedent of which way the world goes from this point on. If we agree to slavery, then slavery shall reign on the earth until monarchs die off, and they won't die off. Why? Because they started out Negro, and they are going to end Negro, but they'll just continue to hide and play monarchy games with our sovereignty. If we refuse to own our sovereignty, we are dooming not only ourselves, the entire earth to domination in a one world system. This was their plan. They just had to get rid of the only place where we claimed our birthright sovereignty and offered it to people trying to escape domination. So what better way to get rid of American saviors who offer our land to our people who were experiencing domination under a monarchy. We tried to do the right thing. They turned around and said we are the ones that were escaping a monarchy. No, we weren't. We were trying to help people that look like us. Who I think we recognized that they were our people who had been taken with Columbus when he showed up and everybody got displaced. So if we finally give up our own birthright, there is no hope for the rest of the world. They will be dominated by some kind of religious driven monarchy that finds some other way to use God to dominate people. And now I done talk into another speech, but let's listen to Mr. Jericho, and I hope you can hear. If not, I apologize. I think we were able to hear when I did the Anna video, so I'm hoping that it's the same with Jericho. I'm just trying to place the speaker in a way where the sound will best come out. So let's see, let's go for it.
My name is Peter DeRico. I'm a lawyer. I graduated way back in the 60s from Yale Law School, and I was quite dissatisfied with law. I was dissatisfied with what was happening in the world with the Vietnam War and with the prospects for what was a young lawyer supposed to do if he didn't want to work inside this gigantic beast of a legal system. And I ended up deciding to go for something that seemed completely different. It was completely different. I went out to a brand new legal services program in the Navajo Nation called Dinebaina Nahilna Be Agartahe. It meant lawyers who work for the economic revitalization of the people. And that turned me around, gave me a sense there was something to do as a lawyer. I was still dissatisfied with the way in which legal systems work, the hierarchy in them and all of the rest of it, the arcane procedures, but I also knew that there were ways to work those procedures, and using skills that I had learned in school and skills that I developed on the way, I started representing Navajo people, Hopi people, and then eventually decided that I needed to pull back and get a bigger picture of indigenous peoples in general, standing outside the Western legal tradition. So that all happened 50 years ago. And I followed up that legal work with a teaching career at the University of Massachusetts in a liberal arts legal studies program that I helped create. And I also did litigation. I represented Native individuals. I represented prisoners who wanted access to Native spiritual teachers. I represented Wampanoag fishermen, worked with Western Shoshone land rights issues, a lot of different things. And over the years, kept taking notes, kept writing things. And finally, just actually a few years back, 3 or 4 years right now, I started writing in serious to see if I could pull threads together. And the threads that I started to pull together started to gel into what I thought could be a book. And it turned out, friends of mine, colleagues encouraged me, yes, this looks like a book. And eventually I had 2 offers from publishers to publish it. And I went with Prager. And you can see the book here behind me on the bookshelf here. What came out was called Federal Anti-Indian Law, Legal Entrapment of Indigenous Peoples. And the details of the book go through all the different elements of what I call federal anti-Indian law. The standard name is federal Indian law. But when you look at what the rules of federal Indian law are, you realize it's actually anti-Indian law. And so I called it that. And the part that's most relevant to talk to the Parliament of World Religions about has been already revealed by many people protesting what's called the doctrine of Christian discovery, which reached such a pinnacle of attention just a year ago that the Vatican itself decided they had to issue a statement saying they didn't really believe in this doctrine of Christian discovery. Well, what is the doctrine of Christian discovery? If you've never heard of it before, you need to know about it. It's a legal doctrine that was put forward by popes in the 15th century to authorize Portugal to have exclusive rights to slave trading in Africa, and Spain to have exclusive rights to land domination in the so-called New World. And that theme of Christian domination was picked up by other monarchs besides Portugal and Spain, particularly England in the case of most of what has now happened in the United States. And the various kings announced that they were going to authorize explorers to go find lands that weren't already claimed by other Christian monarchs and claim them for themselves. And that eventually led to 1823, a decision by the United States Supreme Court by Chief Justice Marshall, about whom there's all kinds of wonderful things written, what a great man he was and the rest of it. In Johnson versus McIntosh, John Marshall said that the question about who owns the land of the New World, of North America, of this continent, was resolved by the doctrine of Christian discovery, which said that the Christian discoverers owned the land. And Marshall said that after the Revolution, that ownership claim devolved to the United States. And that began what's called federal Indian law. There were two other cases that followed it, both of which are also important and partly even maybe more well-known than Johnson v. McIntosh. Johnson versus McIntosh is really a property case. The Cherokee Nation versus Georgia and Worcester versus Georgia are two cases that are clearly in the so-called field of federal Indian law. And those cases, again, Supreme Court cases, John Marshall asserted that the federal government has total domination over native peoples, indigenous peoples of the continent, based on the same original doctrine of Christian discovery. So there in a nutshell, there's a tremendous amount packed into what I just said, but I think you can get the big picture here, is that from the framework of the Parliament of World Religions, thinking about world religion, the world history, the history of religions, all of the stuff that goes together with that over centuries and millennia comes to a head in United States law that's considered still valid law today. It's cited today. It was cited just earlier this year in a case that everybody applauded. It was the upholding of the Indian Child Welfare Act. But the Supreme Court said the reason that it was upholding the Indian Child Welfare Act is because the federal government had total control over Native peoples. And if it wanted to do something good, it could do something good. If it wanted to do something bad, it can do something bad.
Hello.
That's the simple decision in that case when you strip away all the rest of the rhetoric. And I think that when all that becomes clear, you have at least a foundation to figure out, where do we stand? Where do we go? What's the possible various avenues for dealing with any of this? It's still active doctrine. It's behind the taking of land, Apache land for a copper mine, of taking Shoshone and Paiute land for a lithium mine, of taking Standing Rock land for a oil pipeline. These are live, ongoing controversies based on these ancient doctrines. And I guess I want to add one more thing, which is that if we go back behind the 15th century, if we go back earlier than the popes and their claims that Portugal had the slave trade and Spain had the New World, we actually find a direct line all the way back to the Bible and to the book of Genesis, the origin story of Christianity. And that origin story has in it the so-called covenant or commandment of God to Abraham, for the people of Abraham to go and colonize the Canaanites and other peoples in that region of Canaan, and to take that land. And so we have a colonial mission built in to the book of Genesis, which is the starting point of the great arc of Christian theology. And I feel at this point, there's no other way to talk about this except to be honest. I'm not going to cast stones at anybody that wants to follow the teachings of Jesus. The teachings of Jesus really have been co-opted by some of these powers, but they're not the same as the teachings of colonialism that are embedded in the structure of those powers. That's what really is troubling in the world, it seems to me. And the battles that are going on around who has the right of domination have been going on from that earliest time, claimed that this is a right given by God to go oust somebody else and take their land by violence if necessary, peacefully if possible, and in the process, either eliminate those people or convert them, turn them into who they are not, into somebody new. And a lot of that is applauded. Become a new man, become born again. Many of the things that I'm talking about are actually applauded by other people. But at a traditional, original, indigenous, lifeways position, these are not things to be applauded. And the other books, besides Federal Anti-Indian Law, Steve Newcomb's seminal work, Pagans in the Promised Land, that really opened up a lot of this thinking. And then Steve Schwartzberg's very recent book about the language of genocide, that was the conversations that went on among the so-called founders of the United States about what is the United States in relation to indigenous peoples. There's a lot of material that's come out that's very useful. There are other scholars at work. We're not the only ones, but we have been doing something fairly coherent for quite a time. And I welcome you to inquire further just by reading these books. I unpack basically the whole string of precedent cases, starting with the one that I mentioned, Johnson v. McIntosh, and this so-called trilogy that involves the Cherokee Nation. The trilogy of cases, the second and third of the trilogy involve the Cherokee Nation. And I followed that all the way through till as recent as the book was published, just less than a year. It was published in September 2022. And the most recent cases at that time are included in the book. So I show an unbroken chain of decisions and ways of thinking, primarily at the level of the Supreme Court, but also at some lower courts, showing this unbroken thread. So if a person was really just interested in the specific legal doctrinal issues, what does the law say? How does one case relate to the other case? That's the main contribution that this book offers. And it puts it in, it frames it in this larger context that I talked about, this larger historical, religious, colonialist framework. And it also weaves together, I guess you could say, sort of a memoir of how I got involved in it. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? And raising to a global level by saying, you know, who we are and where we come from and where we're going and what is and what isn't and why. It seems to me that I touch on those and try to give a sense. There's a sort of a philosophical envelope or modern holder for the views that I have that include the really tight legal analysis. I think the first thing I would say is that read everything that you're led to read. Read these, start with these books that I've mentioned, but follow leads anywhere. But follow them with an educated mind that's been educated by understanding this context that we're talking about, because there's a lot of material that's written that has different viewpoints, conflicting viewpoints, And I'm not going to sit here and try to debate everybody in the world, but I want to suggest that if you have questions, the first thing is to say, where are my questions leading me? What do I want to look for? And follow your own intuition about, is what I'm finding here useful, or is it leading me to some more information? Because the questions are going to keep unraveling. It's questions within questions within questions. And some of them will go down a path of, say, political history. Some will go down a path of economic history. Some will be specifically religious. And a lot of it will be actually just personal. What does it mean to be a human being? I found, for me, that was the real serious educational ground that happened when I was in Navajo land. It's not like I suddenly woke up and said, oh, who are the indigenous peoples and what downtrodden people there? That's not where it started. It started with, who am I? What am I? And with elders talking to me about the rain, the land. What does it mean to be alive on planet Earth? So this all begins to overlap and integrate with what we're talking about in terms of so-called environmental concerns, except even that phrase is a problem, because environment sounds like, oh, it's something out there. But we're in the environment. We are the environment. The environment is us, all of that together. The trees, the air that I breathe, the trees that give off oxygen, that breathe in the CO2 that I give out. It's all one complicated, interrelated system. And anybody that tries to break it down into little boxes is already going to never get out. They're like fighting their way out of a paper bag. So if you can get your questions, take them seriously enough and be willing to be puzzled by your questions until you're standing outside. Let the puzzle kind of mature in you. Let the question kind of cook in you a little bit until you get some clarity about, oh, what is next? I say the one thing not to do is try immediately to jump to a solution. That's so typical American, like, oh, let's solve that problem. Well, what is the problem? Well, I don't really have time for that. I just really want to solve this problem. So I want to encourage you to take your questions seriously, understand them as internal, personal, spiritual quests. And anything that comes outside that's like a scholarly quest and the rest of that, fine, let it move in that direction, but always keep bringing it back to, who am I? Where am I from? Where am I going? What is life all about on Earth? That will guide you. And you may or may not ever come to a place where you say, oh, I found the solution. Call on me. I've got the answer. Probably you're going to say, there isn't any such place. But you're in motion. And you're thinking. And you're breathing. And you're alive. That's what's really to be honored in all of this. And I'm thinking that if we go back for a moment to Genesis, and we're dealing with a tribe of people, and this is their God, and why not go out and say, we need more space. We're going to go over and take that space. These stories have gone on inside and outside of Christianity and inside and outside of religions of all kinds for probably as long as there's been different peoples that have been in existence. And the indigenous peoples are not an exception to that. There's all kinds of conflict in history among indigenous peoples. It's not the kind of industrialized warfare that's going on and has been going on now for some time in the Western world, but it was conflict. And it was conflict that was push and shove. And there were porous boundaries. There was overlap. So the resolving of human conflict is really at the root of this, but it's not as if there will not be human conflict. I think that's not what I think anyway. I think that the question is, human conflict is part of what it means to be in existence, just as an animal, as different animals have tensions and conflicts between them in the organization of a pack and in the overlapping zones of influence and feeding that go on. Humans are like that. And so there isn't any of these religions that's exempt from that. Even the religions that claim, oh, we're for peace, there should be no conflict. Okay, well then, I mean, that just doesn't have any traction to me. It's an interesting idea, and it's a way to guide the resolution of conflict when it occurs. But it seems to me that if you're thinking about what is religion about in all of this, and there's no magic to it at all. It seems to me, anyway, there is great spiritual mystery to it. So we don't know why. Why are humans here? Why are animals here? Why are plants here? Why do plants compete with each other and animals compete with each other and humans compete with each other for space on Earth? That just seems to be part of what happens. And then the spiritual duty, at least of the humans, if there is any such special category, is let's look at this and let's see how we can coexist. And it will be push and pull. And how do we resolve that? And that's an ongoing thing. That to me is just, that's an ongoing thing. I don't look for an end for that. And I think part of the problems of religion is that they promise an end. And political people do that too. Vote for me and all your problems will be solved. And that whole way of thinking seems to me to be really fruitless. Rather, take this fact that there are these different religions, all of them grappling with deep ancient mysteries, and just say, what do we share? We share the acknowledgement that there's mystery. I mean, it's like thinking all the different religions say there's one God, and then instead of saying, well, that's a good starting point, they fight over because, well, you defined God wrong. All right, we got the definition, the right definition of God. That's the mistake, is say, if they find what's in common, which is the unknown, which is the mystery, which is the spiritual, whatever vitality of existence, and let that mature in your sense and in your relations with others. Greetings again to all of the people in the Parliament, and thanks to my fellow panelists for allowing me to be present this way, this so-called virtual way.
And there you have it. That's Peter Jericho. I think I'm going to stop share. I think I'm going to pause one more time. Yes, I just wanted to pause so I could put my headphones back in, because to play a video, I have to take my headphones out. You know, so I could hopefully we could hear what he said. I like a lot of what he said. And I, thought about how he says, it's funny how we're encouraged to believe that a one God for all is the best way to go, but then we're still fighting. So in other words, the ironic thing of the one God idea is that it will lead to all people being subject to the domination of very few men who, if you really follow the breadcrumbs, it's just this same group of men who've been pushing for this since the time of Akhenaten, pushing for a one God system so that they can be the voice of God. You see, God is always going to have most likely a male voice. That's what we've had pretty much, right? And so then you're going to find out the hard way that it was only a human male, and he was such a punk ass that he went into hiding and put a white face in place of his black one. So it's like, Negro, you don't even want to be seen. Why you want to dominate the world? Be that Negro and show your black face, King James, because that's one of the big dogs that didn't want to show his true color. I told you I found the quote when his subjects asked King James to see his face. His response, now this I found on a British royal website. I'm gonna have to link it. His answer was, I will turn around, pull down my breeches, and show my arse, something to that effect. So what I gather from King James' snooty little response is that, number one, his subjects never knew what he looked like. His subjects did not know what the fuck he looked like. I'll say that again. His subjects didn't know what the fuck he looked like. And when they wanted to find out who's dominating them, it would, if you're doing the will of God, no need in hiding, right? You're doing the up and the right thing, right? His answer was basically, I will turn around, pull down my pants, and you could kiss my colorless ass. This is what King James, this is his attitude. Now, is it a horrible thing that people you're being dominated by would like to know who's dominating them? It sounds like you might not have been treating them so very well if you don't want them to see you. So yeah, we're gonna have to pull that up so people can get real about just how this man was dealing. He didn't even want to be seen. So then when you see pictures of him looking white, you got to wonder. So this is what he wanted us to see? Because ain't nobody pulled those pictures off the shelf and said, that's not what he looked like. Nobody did that yet. So this must be approved by the descendants of King James, that he be shown to be as if he's white, and he wasn't. No, he wasn't. So yeah, Mr. Jericho shows us, that a religion is not necessarily the answer, because you're always going to have that mine is the right one, yours not the right one, even in a one God situation. But see, that is by design. Again, they create the problem, the priesthood. Then they come with the magic solution. That was the plan. So as we're fighting over which one is the real God, the priesthood is going to show up one day. They're all real. Oh, the halo going to come on their head. Did you see the mystery that Allah and Jesus and Yah, it's just one and the same? Something is going to be done to make it one religion, to make the one world order, right? Something got to be said, right? So something got to give in order for them to finally come together. They're gonna have to agree on something, right? So yeah, we want to just hear from Mr. Jericho himself. He has a good background in dealing with the rights of indigenous people, and we read his article, sovereignty, federal Indian sovereignty. Now you see it, now you don't. We read that piece where he says, that if you go for state sovereignty, you're sacrificing self-determination. That's the state. And then he goes into, tells you federal Indian law, so that's federal, is the now you see it, now you don't kind of sovereignty. Where in some cases, they, like he said in this video, they decide they do something good and then they do something bad just as easily. That's why you don't want this kind of domination. And I think I'll just leave it at that. I do want to link this video as well. So that's where we're going to leave off today. Thank you again for watching. Yes, I thought I'd end on him, but I run my mouth a little bit more at every chance I get. It's apparently. So thank you for what do you call it? Putting up with this in as much as you did. I hope it was somewhat informative. And till next time, I wish you peace, health, wealth. Said this before, but let's say it again: your land back, your identity back, your full sovereignty back. all the great things and more. Be and stay highly favored. Thank you again. Till next time.